There was a sea of people ahead. Hundreds of thousands of disciples were watching an intense battle. Sand and stone tore through the air alongside the powerful winds. There were two figures on the battlefield. One was a beautiful figure surrounded by whirling wind blades. Like a celestial goddess, she was Tangwana. The one she was facing was a man in thick armor. That armor had runes the color of the ground, and powerful earth energy continuously surged towards him. It was the Western Desert's heavenly genius, Yenmachin. Its sister Wana. "Boss, let's go cut down that ground beetle," raged one of the dragon blood warriors. "Hey, what did I tell you guys before? This place is not the Eastern Wasteland. Don't think about fighting and killing all day. Use kindness to subdue others. Furthermore, Waner isn't losing. She hasn't fought in a long time, so fighting a bit is good. Maybe then she won't want to fight me all day. Let's go find a good place to watch." Long Chen didn't plan on immediately interfering. He wasn't worried for Tang Waner at all. She had obtained a powerful inheritance in the immemorial path. Combined with her refining the 10,000 spirit blood, her power was extremely great. Most importantly, she was someone who had faced death with him several times and was a true expert forged through many great battles. The wind blades around her surged and crashed like a tsunami. With two wind blades in her hands, she forced Yenmachin to retreat miserably over and over again. Fortunately for Yenmachin, that thick armor around him was the great earthen armor condensed from his core runes. It was his strongest defense, and the wind blades were all blown back when they struck it. However, the wind blades also possessed immense destructive power, leaving countless nicks in his earth armor. He was forced to constantly draw out earth energy to repair those nicks, or his earth armor would have long since shattered. All the experts watching were stunned. They had never imagined that a rank 4 celestial like Tangwana would be able to repeatedly force back the rank 5 celestial Yenmachin. "Sister Waner is mighty. Sister Waner is mighty. Sister Waner is mighty." There was a group of people that were constantly cheering. When Long Chen looked over, he couldn't help but laugh. Who could the person leading that group be other than Guoran? Long Chen immediately saw Gu Yang's bright head behind him. He was relieved to see him, and he brought his group over. "Ha, boss, you've come too." That Yenmachin was such a damn poser, saying that he could challenge the entire Eastern Wasteland. Thus, Sister Waner decided to teach him a lesson, explained Guoran with a smile. "Did you manage to obtain the secrets of the wooden puppets?" Long Chen suddenly thought of the last time he had seen him. It's too depressing to talk about." "The only thing I got was my own tears," said Guoran sorrowfully. "Gu Yang, how did you manage to get out of the illusion formation?" asked Long Chen. Gu Yang blushed, causing Long Chen to be stunned. "This little fellow paid someone to bring him out." "Ha," laughed Guoran, his gloom vanishing in an instant. Gu Yang rubbed his head, embarrassed. There was no way around it. Otherwise, I'd have failed on the first part. Even that's an option? Not bad, not bad. In truth, there are many things that money can solve. Sometimes it's even more effective than martial strength, so it's not embarrassing," laughed Long Chen. "Oh boss, look, our ferry boat has also come. He's even looking worshipfully at you," exclaimed the dragon blood warrior who had spent a few days acting as a ferryman. Long Chen quickly saw a pair of eyes filled with rancor glaring at him. That gaze clearly said he wanted to bite Long Chen to death. How was it worshipful? That person was precisely the person who had been viciously put in his place twice, Han Yunshan. "I wonder if the brother who bought him managed to make back his money?" laughed the dragon blood warrior. Long Chen ignored Han Yunshan. That idiot was nothing to him, unable to pose the slightest threat. Han Yunshan was gathered with the Northern Source's disciples. Although the people here looked to be in disarray, they were actually split into 4 regions. Long Chen quickly saw a beautiful woman in the Southern Sea's side waving slightly at him. She was Zhao Zian. Long Chen smiled slightly and nodded toward her, which could count as a greeting. Guoran was shocked and worshipfully said, "Boss, you really are the boss. No matter who she is, any woman ends up captured in your hands." When it comes to seducing Dash, a hand clamped onto Guoran's throat. Long Chen raged, "Brat, when are you going to reserve yourself a bit? I almost got killed several times because of you." Do you know how many times Tang Wanner beat me in private because of your blabbing mouth? If you want to die, can you not bring me down with you? Long Chen's fury immediately erupted. Because of Guoran, he had been interrogated by Tang Wanner many times when no one else had been watching. Thinking of that, he ground his teeth. It was just a misunderstanding, boss. Furthermore, Sister Meng Qi and Wanner aren't here. Guoran begged for forgiveness. Only then did Long Chen release him. He wasn't afraid of a godlike opponent, but he was afraid of a pig-like ally. He had been implicated by Guoran far too many times. Reporting to boss, "That Wei Changhai is glaring at you," said Guoran immediately after being released. "Ignore him. They're all just idiots." "Is the entire Dragonblood Legion present?" asked Long Chen. "Yes, they're all here. But there are over 70 brothers that came with us that didn't manage to pass," said Guoran. "Over 70? Long Chen sighed. Only 500 people had come from the eastern wasteland, and the Dragonblood Legion had taken up most of those spots. Now that 70 had been taken from their number, it really was pitifully low. For over 70 people to be unable to pass such a simple trial, the power difference was truly immense. Long Chen looked around. Doing a rough estimate, he'd say there were less than 750,000 people. Of 876,000 disciples, only over 100,000 of them had been washed out. The failure rate wasn't very high. Long Chen had originally thought that at least half of them would fail. Boom. Tang Wanner suddenly summoned a huge wind blade and exchanged a head-on blow with Yen Mochen. Both sides fell back. "Sister Wanner is mighty. Beat this ground beetle," cried Guoran. Gu Yang and the others also cheered along. Although this exchange had ended in a draw, everyone could clearly see that it was Yen Mochen who was at a disadvantage. Tang Wanner's attacks were too agile and drifting. She could attack from any angle with great destructive power. As for Yen Mochen, he had only managed to keep up thanks to an Earth attribute expert's great defensive power. If this continued, then the attacking Tang Wanner would have much higher odds of winning. As for Yen Mochen, he wouldn't even have a chance to counterattack and would only be able to stall for time. This result was unacceptable to the Western Desert's people. It was they who had mocked the Eastern Wasteland the most, calling them dogs. But now Yen Mochen, their top expert, a Grand Rank 5 Celestial, was at a disadvantage against a Rank 4 Celestial. Their faces were burning hot as if they had just been slapped. Yen Mochen refuses to use his full power against a woman. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to last even 100 exchanges. Cried one of the Western Desert's disciples. "You're still alive?" Guoran was stunned. That person was the one who had come out to insult the Eastern Wasteland's disciples first, Xie Wei. On that day, he had almost been killed by a single slash of Yu Zifeng's sword. If it hadn't been for an elder saving him, he'd have died. Then, Long Chen had slapped him so hard that he had fainted in front of everyone. "Of course I'm still alive. You think an insignificant trial of this difficulty can stop me?" sneered Xie Wei. "No, you misunderstand. What I meant was, you're not embarrassed to stay alive. You lost so much face that day that anyone else would have killed themselves out of shame. I admire your bravery," praised Guoran. "You." Xie Wei almost coughed up blood. Guoran was intentionally picking at his scab. Thinking of how much face he had lost that day, he clenched his teeth but was unable to retort. He could only endure. "Don't be like this, I'm not trying to humiliate you. I really admire you. This is praise." "Yes, it's praise," said Guoran. Although he said it was praise, that evil smile made it so no one could believe him. "Yen Mochen, next time you want to say such big words, you should consider your own power first. Don't spout whatever you want, or you can come and try me any time," said Tang Wanner indifferently before ignoring him and returning to her side. "Sister Wanner is mighty," cheered the Dragonblood warriors. Seeing Long Chen looking at her with a mischievous smile, Tang Wanner blushed slightly. She rebuked, "What are you looking at me like that for? Did I do something wrong?" "You didn't do anything wrong, but you said something wrong." "What?" "Your words were too filthy." "Filthy? Just look at how big he is. You want him to appraise his crap power before speaking?" Don't you think that it's too filthy? Tang Wanna didn't understand for a long time. But seeing Guoran and Gu Yang smiling, she suddenly realized what he was saying. Long Chen, you're disgusting. Ah, Long Chen's words truly were disgusting. Tang Wanna couldn't bear it, but the Dragon Blood warriors all laughed. As for Yen Mochen, his expression sank. But suddenly, space shook, and a majestic pressure descended, causing everyone's hearts to shake. This is a pun on and, which sound the same, but Tang Wanner says power, while Long Chen says crap. So in Long Chen's words, Tang Wanner said, next time you want to say such big words, you should first appraise your crap. Everyone quickly turned around, their expressions changing. A large mountain had suddenly appeared in front of them. On it, there was a long staircase that led to a huge gate. The gate was a mile high, and its roof continued into the clouds. That grand and sacred majesty caused all of them to feel reverence. On the gate was a huge immortal character, Xian. It was written gracefully and almost seemed to move. It was full of Dao charm. We've passed. We got into the Xiantian Dao sect. Seeing this gate, quite a few people began to weep tears of joy. They were sure this was the gate to the Xiantian Dao sect. Seeing this scene, Long Chen's mouth curled, but he didn't say anything. According to his experience, things probably wouldn't be as simple as they thought. If they really had passed, they would be standing right in front of the gate, not at the bottom of this huge staircase. At this moment, a beautiful figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It was Mu Qingxian. Looking at all of them, she smiled, and in their current state, the disciples felt like they were being bathed by spring wind. Senior apprentice Sister Qingxian, you've come to receive us. Qingxian, you're beautiful. I love you. Senior apprentice Sister Qingxian, I'll work hard to be your Dao companion. Qingshuan's arrival caused a burst of passion, making them go a bit out of control. The excited disciples began to spout some brazen words. Thank you all for looking favorably upon me. Now I don't know how to say what I have to say. Mu Qingshuan's expression grew a bit bitter. Guoran and the others looked at each other. As expected, it definitely wouldn't be so simple. Even now, people hadn't recovered from their excitement. But some people did hear the clue in her words. Everyone shut up. The Xiantian Dao sect is somewhere only elites amongst elites can join. Not just any trash can muddle their way in, shouted a rank 4 celestial, his words like ice water. Long Chen looked over. Although that person was a rank 4 celestial, his aura was extremely condensed. His strength was not bad. The atmosphere immediately sank. Quite a few people were angry and about to curse him when Mu Qingshuan's voice rang out. Everyone, please calm down and listen. An unwilling expression appeared in her eyes, but she took a deep breath and said, cultivation is cruel and merciless. 10 years ago, I stood here just like you and saw many of my companions cheering, and some even cried. But when we heard the next bit of news, our excitement vanished. Before truly entering the Xiantian Dao sect and becoming one of its disciples, you still have to go through another cruel trial. To tell the truth, your generation's talent is much greater than mine, but your actual strength is much weaker. This next test is merciless, and it's likely over half of you will wash out here. In fact, this number will very likely be even greater. Mu Qingshuan's voice was heavy. It was like a hammer striking their hearts. Over half will wash out. Those excited people's smiles instantly vanished to be replaced with disbelief. Looking at those expressions, Mu Qingxian was a bit unwilling, but she had no choice. Cultivation is just that cruel. There are no emotions to speak of. The strong want to get stronger, so all your resources have to be fought for by yourselves. That's why you see the strong get stronger, because the resources that should have been split to the weak were taken by them. Don't grumble about it being unfair, because there was never anything known as fairness in this world. If you want to become strong, you have to go all out to fight. I've said everything that is it to be said. Let the final trial begin. This trial is very simple. All you have to do is climb the 999 stairs to reach my position. Boom. Suddenly, the void shook. 2 huge figures appeared at the top of the staircase, and everyone's hair stood on end. a sudden chill pervading to their bones. 10th rank Xian beasts. Long Chen was shocked, because he had experienced this terrifying pressure twice before. He knew what kind of existence it was from. These were two 3,000-mile serpents. Their entire bodies were covered in golden scales with ancient runes flickering on them. Their powerful pressure made it seem like heaven and earth would be compressed. On their heads were golden horns with runes revolving around them that caused space to quiver. They aren't serpents, nor are they pythons. They should be the legendary drakes. Long Chen's heart pounded. Serpents, pythons, drakes, and dragons. Legends said that this was how serpents evolved to become dragons. But everyone thought that this was just nonsense. A serpent was a serpent. Even if it cultivated for a lifetime, in the end, it would just be a bigger serpent. It didn't have the slightest relation to a dragon. But some people also thought that this theory was correct. The process of a serpent evolving into a dragon was the same as humans reaching the peak of their cultivation, becoming a god or immortal. Today, Long Chen was excited and shocked to see these true drakes. One reason was because he could now confirm their existence, while the other reason was the fact that the Shen Dao sect had the power to possess such terrifying Xian beasts. Long Chen had it good since this wasn't the first time he was facing this kind of terrifying existence. As for the Dragonblood warriors, their expressions changed slightly. Although they had once faced the pressure of a 10th rank sea demon, it hadn't been at such close range. Their hair stood on end. As for the other disciples, they were pale, barely able to breathe. Some were even on the verge of collapse. Two 10th rank Xian beasts' pressure scared them out of their wits. Thank you for your trouble, seniors. Mu Qingxian respectfully bowed toward the two of them. It's fine. Let the trial begin. We're waiting to return to cultivate, said one of the drakes, shocking quite a few people. They immediately collapsed on the ground. Beasts could speak human words? This was unimaginable in the eyes of countless cultivators. Yes. Mu Qingxian waved her hand, and the staircase's runes lit up before once more fading as if nothing had happened. But Long Chen could sense some kind of energy present within them now. All right, the final trial begins here. As long as you can reach the 999th stair, you'll pass, said Mu Qingxian. Just as Mu Qingxian activated the trial, within the Elder Hall, all the elders were watching this scene as well. Their expressions were complicated. There was pity, expectation, and unwillingness. One of the elders sighed. It's the strongest generation but also the weakest. Everyone else was silent, understanding what he meant. In terms of talent, this generation was outstanding, but their actual strength was the weakest in all of history. It was ironic. As the elders watched them reach this point, they had all cursed the people who had raised them. What bastards had raised such talented disciples into sheep? All they did was raise their talent and cultivation base, but they didn't raise their mental realm or will. That was basically raising wolves into sheep. Their fangs were about to completely recede. No matter how strong they were, what was the point? Were they supposed to feed their enemies until they died? This had infuriated the elders to the extreme. Such good disciples had been ruined, a waste of natural treasures. Originally, I wanted to bet on what percentage of them would pass. But now, sighed an elder. Don't be angry. We shouldn't judge them with the Central Plains standard. After all, the situation in those desolate places isn't good. The fact that they could raise this many talented disciples is already quite amazing. My guess is that there was a sudden influx of geniuses, and in their delight, they didn't want to lose any. But at least the Eastern Wasteland's disciples are good. Those Dragonblood Legion fellows are all amazing, said the Hall Master. It truly is rare. Their talent is just ordinary, but their combat power and experience are shocking. Especially that Long Chen, he's practically a monster. He defeated Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai like they were children, and even used Han Yunshan as a boat to make money. The elders had all been paying attention to Long Chen. When they had seen him turn Han Yunshan into a tool to cross the lake and make money, they had all been speechless. As expected, Long Chen's head was different from an ordinary person. Would an ordinary person ever think of such a crazy thing? Hall Master, with your vision, how many people do you think will pass? Asked an elder. This question of yours is quite evil. First you praise me, and then if I'm wrong, it'll be like a slap in my face, laughed the hall master. That elder immediately turned red, while the others laughed. The hall master thought about it for a while. Looking at the scene before him, he said, under the pressure of the two Drake race seniors, there is no way for them to hide the weakness in their hearts. The first 333 stairs test their ability to face terror, the middle 333 stairs test their will, and the last 333 stairs are the most difficult. They attack their negative emotions. Most of these disciples have been pampered and never experienced any life and death trials. And unfortunately, the Xiantian staircase is a test of their heart, not their talent. I won't make a guess, but I think you should pray for them. While the elders were worrying about them, all the disciples in front of the Xiantian staircase didn't dare to move. No one was making a sound. I'll go first. The rest of you keep up, said Longchen. In front of the hundreds of thousands of gazes, he directly walked over to the staircase. Longchen was the first to walk onto the staircase. Tang Wan'er and the others maintained a set distance from him as they followed. This caused everyone's attention to fall on Longchen. He became the focal point for hundreds of thousands of people. What a show-off. Who does he think he is? How could the final trial be so simple? He's just embarrassing himself, sneered someone, feeling like Longchen would definitely suffer for trying to take the spotlight. Idiot, do you think a rank 4 celestial like you could comprehend senior apprentice brother Longchen's capabilities? Before criticizing others, consider whether you have the qualifications or not, retorted someone else. The person who was speaking for Longchen was one of the disciples who had passed because of him. He had personally seen how domineering Longchen was. 8th rank 8 magical beasts had been blown back by a single punch of his. Furthermore, Longchen never put on airs with him or the others. Only later had he understood a certain principle. Truly badass people never had to be posers, because there was no need. Those people who liked to be posers were normally just people who felt inferior and were afraid that others would think they were insignificant if they weren't posers. To put it bluntly, those show-offs only showed off to find meaning for their own existence. People with real skills didn't need to do that, or perhaps they were already tired of being everyone else's focus point. That kind of mannerism was something possessed by people who felt lonely at the top. That was truly badass. You're also from the northern source, so why speak for the eastern wasteland? What did he bribe you with to make you submit to him? Raged that person. Fuck off, I look down on you useless people, who only like to criticize others to feel like you exist, the most. If you have any ability, why don't you go up there as well? Why shout from here? And why are you hiding in such a dark spot? The other person also wasn't a kind-hearted person and cursed back. Don't cause a ruckus or you'll lose your qualifications to participate in the trial, ordered Mu Qingxian coldly. At this time, Longchen had stepped onto the first stair. Her complete attention was on him. But there was no reaction at all when he stepped onto it. It was like he had just stepped onto an ordinary stair. He didn't even bat an eye. How is that possible? Mu Qingxian was stunned. She was from the previous generation of disciples, and she was well aware of how terrifying the Xiantian staircase was. The first 333 stairs tested how well a person could handle terror. This formation plus the pressure of 2 10th-rank Xian beasts would make a person scared out of their wits. But Longchen didn't have the slightest reaction to it. It wasn't just Mu Qingxian who was shocked. All the elders in the elders' hall were shocked. Does Longchen not have the slightest fear in his heart? Impossible. The 2 10th-rank Xian beasts looked at Longchen. One of them said, the aura of the ancestors. Yes. For a human to receive the care of the ancestors, he must be extraordinary, said the other. The two of them were communicating with a secret art, others were unable to hear them. From the surface, it didn't even seem like they were communicating. In truth, when Longchen stepped onto the first stair, he truly did feel a strange fluctuation. However, he didn't do anything to resist and allowed it to wash over him instead. He had no fear in his heart. He was immune to this energy, because this terror was nothing more than child's play to him, someone who had experienced countless life and death battles. It wasn't just Long Chen. Even the Dragonblood warriors were barely affected. They only frowned slightly, recognizing that this was a trial that amplified their feeling of terror before continuing onwards. What? So it was fake? Seeing that the Dragonblood warriors had reached the 100th step without any reaction, a disciple sighed and walked over to the staircase. But when he stepped onto the first stair, he immediately turned pale, endless terror in his eyes as his body involuntarily trembled. I actually thought there was a problem with the Xiantian staircase. Now I'm relieved, sighed Mu Qingxian. That disciple seemed to be struggling with a nightmare. He let out a furious roar, and the terror in his eyes was forced back slightly. Clenching his teeth, he continued onwards. But when he reached the 10th step, he knelt on it, his whole body quivering, unable to move any further. A ray of light eventually sent him off. "You failed the trial," said Mu Qingxian. That disciple was ashen. Her words meant he had no destiny with the Xiantian Dao sect. "Brother, what happened?" Someone helped this person up, curious about his experience. 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones. That person was still quivering, but he managed to spit out his price. "What the fuck? Why don't you go and try robbing people directly instead?" Raged the other person. "If you don't give me the money, don't even think about getting my secret. I've failed the trial, and I want to use some money to make up for the pain of failure." So what? Everyone thought about it. This person was truly pitiful. Giving him some money could count as consolation. "Fine, I'll give you 10,000. "Here," said a rich fellow, tossing him 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones. "I'll only tell whoever pays me. You can't share it with anyone else." That person's eyes brightened. "Courting death. Do you believe me when I say I'll crush you right here?" Roared everyone. That person's heart shook. "Afraid of being beaten," he said, "the staircase has some kind of formation. It's very frightening." "Fuck, are you asking to be beaten?" That explanation didn't appease them at all. What kind of answer was this? It wasn't worth a damn, let alone 10,000 middle-grade spirit stones. A few of them were just about to teach him a lesson. "Don't hit me, don't hit me. It's the truth, it's very frightening," cried that person. "Don't make things hard on him. It should be a kind of formation that causes terror to the soul." Everyone's concept of terror is different, so there's no way for him to explain it clearly, said Zhao Ziyan. Since Zhao Ziyan had spoken, they released him. One of them said, "But Long Chen and the others, perhaps they don't have any fear." Zhao Ziyan looked at those free and easygoing figures on the staircase and sighed, a complicated expression in her eyes. "Previously, when I was with senior apprentice brother Long Chen, he said that the reason experts are experts is because they have the determination to get stronger. They have to know why they want to get stronger and find their own motivation. That becomes their conviction, and once they find their conviction, they can completely stabilize their Dao heart and become fearless," said someone. "What useless words. It's just a problem of big or small guts. Those afraid of death shouldn't come," said one person icily. Infuriated, the other person was just about to curse that person when he saw that the person talking was the Western Desert's Yen Machin. He swallowed his words. "It's just a stupid staircase, but you brought up such useless principles? Warriors from the Western Desert, let's go. Let them see that everything else is nonsense in front of true power." Yen Machin sneered and led the Western Desert's people onto the staircase. But when he stepped onto the first one, his body clearly shuddered. He hid it well, but everyone saw his expression change for a moment. However, Yen Machin was truly powerful. He quickly got used to the feeling and continued onwards. But the people behind him were clearly unable to keep up with him. Although they had been prepared, they were pale and clearly felt climbing the staircase to be extremely taxing. But after getting used to it for a while, they continued onwards. Following the Western Desert's movements, Zhao Ziyan also went up the stairs, followed by Wei Changhai. Zhao Ziyan frowned irritably and quickened her steps. Han Yunshan had no choice but to follow with all the experts starting to move. But many people found the climbing to be extremely difficult. Some people only lasted for a couple dozen steps before becoming unable to move and being sent out. Only once they truly stepped onto the staircase did they understand its terror. It was like each step up was another step closer to death. Illusions appeared in their minds. It was like they were seeing a mountain of blades and a sea of fire in front of them, as though if they kept going forward, the Grim Reaper's sickle would fall on their necks. Although they could clearly tell themselves it was fake, that they were just illusions, that it was just a trial, this was a terror that came from the depths of their soul. They were unable to resist. Quite a few disciples were constantly being sent off the staircase. Once they failed, they couldn't try again. But no one laughed at them. All the disciples on the staircase had no idea how much longer they would be able to endure either. As they advanced, the feeling of terror grew even stronger. Many of them were starting to buckle, their legs not listening to their orders. But looking at the dragon blood warriors at the front, they clenched their teeth and persevered. How unexpected! Perhaps a few more disciples can pass like this. Mu Qingxian smiled. Seeing other people succeeding would promote more confidence, which allowed new people to succeed as well. The 300th stair. All the elders were focused on Long Chen. The dragon blood warriors behind him were exactly 10 steps behind him, just like they had been from the start. They hadn't fallen even one step behind. The 334th stair. When Long Chen stepped onto the 334th stair, the entire Elder Hall's palace became silent. Long Chen's foot landed on the 334th step. In that instant, he felt space suddenly twist, and time seemed to grow slow. In that instant, everything suddenly became distant and indistinct. Each step seemed like an uncrossable cliff. This is a test of will? Long Chen smiled slightly. He had experienced this kind of trial already in the Eastern Wasteland. He trusted that everyone had experienced that trial as well. But compared to the original Netherworld Heaven staircase in the Eastern Wasteland, this trial was many times stronger. Furthermore, each step brought them closer to the two terrifying drakes. That made it so people didn't dare to advance. This was a test of mettle, will, and toughness. But this still wasn't enough to stop Long Chen. The difficulty of these steps was far from enough to slow him down. What? No reaction at all? The elders watching were all shocked. Long Chen's rhythm didn't change in the slightest. His will is frighteningly firm. It isn't disturbed in the slightest by outer forces, said the Hall Master. With the trial of the steps along with the pressure of the powerful Xian beasts, a person's will would easily crumble. It truly is terrifying. Previously, no matter how strong the genius was, they would at least need a few breaths to get accustomed before continuing, sighed an elder. In the fight amongst heavenly geniuses, there are red flowers and green leaves that set each other off. But as for who is the flower and who is the leaf, there are many variables, said the Hall Master. You mean that Long Chen could? Probed one of the elders. Everything's too early to say. Just calmly watch, said the Hall Master. The elders turned silent. They understood the Hall Master's meaning, but was that really possible? No matter how big the leaf was, it couldn't bloom. Long Chen's footsteps didn't change, but behind him, Tang Waner, Gu Yang, and the others all paused for an instant. Their bodies swayed. Big bro Gu Yang, I'll entrust myself to you. Treat me well, and after this, junior brother will definitely repay your kindness 1,000 times over. It's regretful that I was born a man, or I would definitely give my heart to you. Guoran was covered in sweat, and he tightly held Gu Yang's hand. Guoran, I will toss you aside if you continue, raged Tang Wan. Guoran's constitution was the weakest. No, he was the weakest of all of them in terms of almost everything. Having followed them to this point was his limit. Don't worry, go in peace. Gu Yang knocked Guoran unconscious and carried him on his back as he continued onwards. Cheating. I wish to report an egregious violation of the rules. Seeing Gu Yang use this method to let someone pass, quite a few people were filled with rage and shouted, "This isn't against the rules. If you feel like it's cheating, you can cheat as well." But let me tell you, if you carry someone, the difficulty will double, said Mu Qingxian. Those people immediately had to shut their mouths and sadly continue. Long Chen was the furthest up the Xiantian staircase. As for Tang Waner and the others, they were originally 10 steps behind him, but now they were over 30 behind. By this level, they also felt immense pressure and could no longer advance as easily before. Their speed dropped slightly. When Long Chen reached the 666th step, they were over 50 steps behind him. As for the other 3 regions' heavenly geniuses, they were all stuck behind the Dragonblood warriors, unable to close the distance at all. This final test wasn't something they could pass through talent. Their advantage had vanished, while their weaknesses were completely exposed. Yen Mochen, Han Yunshan, and Wei Changhai were green with fury. They had originally been thinking to move out later but still reached the top before Long Chen in order to show the others that they were far above him. But who would have thought that, let alone surpassing Long Chen, they were unable to even catch up to the ordinary Dragonblood warriors. They could only watch their butts as they advanced. Quite a few disciples had washed out and were listlessly watching. Long Chen's figure was far too conspicuous on the Xiantian staircase. He only got further ahead of the others. His speed stayed the same the entire time. Long Chen's foot released a light sound as he stepped onto the 667th step. Immediately after that, his other foot raised and he continued forward. This is definitely impossible. The previous deathly silence of the elders was completely broken now. The third part tests their negative emotions. It's a battle against themselves. How could it be so easy? They didn't dare to believe their eyes. Does he not have any negative emotions? Proposed one of the elders brazenly. How could that be possible? Let alone humans, even gods have negative emotions. Someone directly tore apart that theory. I'm going insane. This makes no sense. The elders were incapable of understanding this. There were a few of them were lost in thought though. Those elders were the ones who had been present when the patriarch had sent out the orders. They were all thinking that perhaps only someone like this was capable of drawing the patriarch's attention. But the majority of the elders hadn't been present for that. They were unable to explain what was happening, as this matter surpassed their understanding. Hallmaster, an erudite person like you must understand what's happening. Please explain it to us, begged the elders. This situation has never occurred before, so I can't explain it either. But I have once heard of an extremely monstrous trial back in the immortal era, said the Hallmaster. A monstrous trial from the immortal era? Are you talking about? Yes, legend is that there was a monstrous trial known as the True Self trial. The odds of success were less than 1 in a million. Perhaps some of you haven't heard about it, but the trial is to defeat yourself in a battle. And most monstrous of all, the you that the trial creates will be slightly stronger than you, possesses all your techniques and experience, and their spiritual yuan will never run out, said the Hallmaster. Then how is that any different than suicide? To challenge someone you couldn't possibly defeat, wouldn't you be an idiot? Was it fun to kill yourself? There's pretty much no difference. Perhaps there were too many geniuses in the immortal era, so they used this method to con a few of them into dying. But I have heard that anyone who defeats a stronger version of themselves will have their soul sublimate and will never be suppressed by their negative emotions. Their Tao hearts are incomparably firm and will not waver, said the Hallmaster. Could it be that Long Chen? It's not very likely. Even if he had the urge to kill himself like that, he would need to find such a trial first. Where would he find such trials nowadays? That's not certain. Have you forgotten about the immemorial path? Perhaps he found such a trial in there. Long Chen had to focus to sense his negative emotions as he advanced. He sensed laziness, negativity, despair, exhaustion, and he even seemed to be able to hear voices telling him to give up. But those feelings were very weak. If he didn't intentionally try to sense them, he wouldn't feel them at all. To him, this third part wasn't even as strong as the previous 2 parts. He smiled slightly. He understood the true meaning of the Xiantian staircase. The destruction of the mind was far more effective than pressure to the physical body, and also much more frightful. But he wasn't worried about the Dragonblood warriors. Each one of them had experienced countless brushes past the Grim Reaper. This trial wasn't able to cause them much trouble. However, it would be troublesome for the other disciples. Their movements were extremely slow now. As time passed, their drive would slowly diminish. Then when they reached the part testing their negative emotions, they would be unable to see hope and completely break apart. Long Chen's foot finally stepped onto the 999th stair. He stood right in front of Mu Qingxian. From here, the huge gate overflowed with an ancient charm, and that Xian character on it seemed to contain the secrets of the universe. He saw the most profound principles of heaven and earth within it, but then when he looked closer, he couldn't see any of it at all. Congratulations on passing. Junior apprentice brother Long Chen's power is worthy of admiration, said Mu Qingxian. She had seen Long Chen climb up as if this was just an ordinary staircase. Although she couldn't comprehend this, she knew he had definitely passed through with his own strength. In front of these two terrifying 10th-rank Xian beasts, no one could cheat. It was just luck, said Long Chen humbly. Senior apprentice Sister Qingxian, have you heard of the Skywood Divine Palace? Mu Qingxian smiled. Of course I've heard of it. The Skywood Divine Palace is extremely famous in the Central Plains. If it weren't for a dislikable fellow, perhaps I'd already be a disciple of the Skywood Divine Palace. Long Chen was delighted to hear this. A gentle figure appeared in his mind, and his heart blazed. Then how far is the Skywood Divine Palace from the Xiantian Dao sect? It's not that far. But you couldn't be thinking about moving sects, right? Let me warn you, the Skywood Divine Palace only accepts wood attribute disciples, laughed Mu Qingxian. Senior apprentice sister is joking. In truth, I have a lover in the Skywood Divine Palace. We've been apart for a long time already, and I miss her. Just thinking about Chu Yao made Long Chen's heart ache. He wondered how she had been during these past few years. It's nice that you care, but I feel like you should first think of a way to establish yourself in the Xiantian Dao sect before thinking about other things, advised Mu Qingxian. Many thanks for your reminder. Junior brother understands. Long Chen cupped his hands in thanks. Having obtained some information about the Skywood Divine Palace, his spirits were raised. Yao or just wait. I'll quickly find you. Seeing Long Chen reach the top gave countless people hope. They did their best to climb, but some didn't even manage to reach the second part before being sent out. There were people failing with each passing moment. Currently, 300,000 people were still persevering on the Xiantian staircase, and the majority of them had reached the middle section. As for the Dragonblood warriors, they were past the 800th step, but their speed was clearly much slower. However, their footsteps never paused. In truth, there's no need to go all out like this. As long as they keep advancing, slowing down will save energy. Mu Qingxian shook her head as she watched the Dragonblood warriors climbing while sparing no effort. They know that, said Long Chen. If they know, why bother? They aren't fighting against the Xiantian staircase but against themselves. That's why they are climbing so quickly, to push themselves to their limits. Our talent is only average and our origins are low. To reach our current height, we had to bleed and sweat. We have to go all out like this every day, to not give up any chance to improve ourselves. This kind of trial that has no threat to our lives is especially perfect. We can push ourselves to our limits, and then break those limits again and again. Only then can we increase the chances of our survival the most. Mu Qingxian was startled. Long Chen's words were spoken carefreely, but she could tell how much pain the Dragonblood Legion had endured. All of you are true warriors, praised Mu Qingxian. Well, there was no other choice. To live, we could only get stronger. Long Chen bitterly smiled. The Dragonblood warriors didn't hold back at all, climbing as fast as they could. They felt weary, but they did that on purpose. The wearier they were, the more they could excavate their potential. They were using their powerful negative emotions to encourage themselves. Yan Mochen, Wei Changhai, and Han Yunshan were being thrown further and further into the distance despite doing their best. Originally, they were only 50 steps behind. But now that they were over 100 steps behind, causing them to clench their teeth in fury. The three of them were rank 5 Celestials, but they were actually unable to catch up. Instead, the distance only grew larger. This was a silent slap in the face. At this time, Zhao Ziyan slowly surpassed and created an uncrossable distance between them, infuriating them even more. How stupid! Afraid their own negative emotions weren't enough, they added envy on as well, said Long Chen. They truly are a bit foolish. Mu Qingxian was unable to retort against that. During the final section, a person's negative emotions would burst out and rapidly grow. The more envious they were, the more furious they became, and the more difficult it would be to advance. Perhaps the three of them had still yet to understand the meaning of the Xiantian staircase. A beautiful figure stepped onto the 999th stair. It was Tang Wan. Her face was a bit pale, and she was covered in sweat. But within her weariness was excitement. It's been hard on you. Long Chen smiled and used a handkerchief to gently wipe away her sweat, startling her. Long Chen, Tang Wan was moved. This was the first time Long Chen treated her so warmly, even publicly pampering her like this. I can do it myself. She took the handkerchief and dabbed at her sweat. But while stealthily blocking Long Chen's sight, she dabbed away a few tears. Perhaps I should be kinder to her, thought Long Chen. Although Tang Wan hid her movements well, she couldn't hide them from him. He felt a profound sense of self-blame. Tang Wan was always fiery, direct, and unyielding. Because she cared about him, she intentionally displayed some disdain for his conduct. But in truth, she needed care as well. However, she didn't want Long Chen to see her as weak, so she acted fiercely like a mother tigress. Long Chen had misunderstood her. She was a staunch woman, and this inadvertent movement caused him to see another side to her. Wana, I'm sorry. I haven't looked after you enough. Long Chen sincerely apologized and pulled Tang Wan into his embrace. Tang Wan jumped in surprise. You've gone crazy. There are so many people here. You'll be laughed at, she rebuked. She quickly escaped from his grasp, and while her face was red, she had a warm smile. Let me see who dares to laugh? I'll curse them to never find a woman in their lifetime, said Long Chen grandly. Then it's fortunate that I'm not afraid of this curse. I'm not looking for women, laughed Mu Qingxian from the side. Cough, senior apprentice sister, naturally you don't count, laughed Long Chen awkwardly. Aya. Suddenly, a startled cry rang out with a bang. Guoran had been tossed to the ground. You really worked me to death. Gu Yang was soaked in sweat, looking like he had just climbed out of a pool. Even the stone beneath his feet was wet. Carrying Guoran had completely exhausted him. Brother, it's been hard on you. Junior brother must repay your kindness. Shut up. It'd be better for you to pour me some water and prove your gratefulness with your actions instead of your glib words. Gu Yang sat on the ground. Guoran hastily prepared some tea. If it hadn't been for Gu Yang, he wouldn't have been able to reach this point even if he exhausted himself to death. He had to quickly repay this favor. The other Dragon Blood warriors arrived one by one. Each one of them was weary to the bone, but their eyes were full of pride. They were the first ones to reach the top of the Xiantian staircase, leaving even rank 5 celestials in their dust. That was an honor. Furthermore, they had obtained a new status now that they had climbed the staircase. Disciples of the Xiantian Dao sect. This was their first step in establishing their footing in the Central Plains. 6 hours later, Zhao Ziyan also arrived. But she clearly wasn't as tired as them. In fact, she seemed like it had been quite effortless. Congratulations. In the future, we'll be part of the same sect, so I'll have to ask you to look after me. Long Chun greeted Zhao Ziyan once she arrived. Brother Long overpraises me. It should be you looking after me. Is the Dragon Blood Legion accepting new people? Do I have the qualifications to join? Zhao Ziyan smiled. Long Chen was startled, never having expected her to ask such a question. The Dragon Blood Legion wasn't something just anyone could join. This question made him feel awkward. If he flatly refused, it would be too awkward. Junior sister was just joking. Brother Long, don't take it seriously. I'm tired, so I'll go rest. Zhao Ziyan laughed and said goodbye, finding an isolated place to sit. Once Zhao Ziyan left, Tang Wan whispered, "This sister is angry." What are you talking about? I don't see any anger, said Long Chen. I'm a woman, and this is my woman's intuition, said Tang Wan. Seeing Long Chen ignore her, she continued, "If a beautiful woman wants to join, why would you decline? Don't you like beautiful women the most?" Exactly. Guo hastily shut his mouth when Long Chen glared at him. "Our Dragonblood Legion is a complete whole, and we've all saved each other's lives. Others can't join just because their cultivation base is high, their talent is good, or they're beautiful. The reason we're so strong together is because we're united and can trust each other. A stranger joining in would bring danger to the entire Legion, so how could I let an outsider join so easily?" said Long Chen. Seeing how solemn he was, Tang Wanner stopped speaking. Guoran also kept a hand clamped over his mouth. They understood. Although Tang Wanner's words had been partly a joke to tease Long Chen, she hadn't expected Long Chen to be thinking so much. He couldn't bring danger to the entire Dragonblood Legion because he wanted to pick up girls. 2 hours later, Han Yunshan and the others also finally reached the top. Their expressions were exceedingly ugly, and they were panting for breath, appearing extremely miserable. Due to their envy and hatred for Long Chen, their path had been even more difficult. That had made them waste even more time and energy. More and more disciples began to arrive. Some of them directly fainted upon reaching the top and relaxing. Currently, only 30,000 people passed. Over 400,000 people had washed out, and there were still many people persevering on the staircase. Suddenly, a huge hourglass appeared at the top of the staircase. Mu Qingxian announced, "There are still 3 days left. The people still on the staircase should work hard." Seeing that hourglass, quite a few people's expressions changed. Their power was limited, and they were climbing at a snail's pace right now. Now that there was a time limit, the pressure immediately increased. As a result, quite a few disciples immediately gave up once the hourglass appeared. They knelt on the stairs, and were directly sent off the Xiantian staircase. This hourglass caused many people's confidence to shatter. They felt like there was no hope, and continuing to fight had no meaning. One after another, figures were sent off the Xiantian staircase. Only 10,000 people were still persevering. The majority of them were around the 800 stair, with a small portion around the 700 stair. As for the 600 stair, only a few dozen people were still bitterly enduring, unwilling to give up. "Idiots, I gave up and I was already on the 700 stair. For them to stupidly continue at the 600 stair, there's no hope at all," mocked someone. But Long Chen couldn't help but nod when he saw those few people still bitterly enduring despite there being no hope. As long as the results weren't in, the opportunities were still in your hands. The only way to lose was to give up. Even if it was just the slightest, ephemeral bit, it was still an opportunity. Not giving up was in itself a remarkable drive. "Time's up," announced Mu Qingxian as the final grain of sand fell. The few people still persevering on the Xiantian staircase all had a sad glimmer in their eyes when Mu Qingxuan's voice rang out. As for the people who had long since given up, their derision increased. "The mission is accomplished. We're leaving." The two huge figures suddenly disappeared from their sight. The terrifying pressure instantly vanished with them. It was like a huge boulder had been lifted from everyone's hearts. They relaxed, feeling like the sky had become brighter. Once both of the 10th rank Xian beasts had left, Mu Qingxian smiled at the disciples sitting on the stairs. "Congratulations. According to the rules, any disciples who are on the 500 stair and above when the time is up pass." "What?" Everyone was startled, not daring to believe their ears. That was especially true of those disciples who had reached past the 700 stair before giving up. The 10,000 disciples that were on the Xiantian staircase began to weep tears of joy and excitement. Some even wailed and repeatedly kissed the staircase. Now there were over 90,000 disciples who had passed. 10,000 of those were people who had refused to give up despite already despairing. They had also known there was no hope, but they hadn't been able to give up. "This is unfair. Why didn't you say this beforehand? You were conning people." Some people began to furiously roar. The disciples who had failed the trial immediately erupted in fury, feeling like they had been cheated. That was especially true of those talented rank 4 celestials. Their shouting was the most ferocious. Some even spouted the wildest profanities, crying about how this was cheating and that they wanted to take the trial again. "Everyone, calm down dash," shouted Mu Qingxian. But she was unable to control such a chaotic scene. "It's unfair. Why didn't you state the rules at the beginning? The trial must be held again." "Exactly, restart the trial. There's definitely something fishy, or how could those Eastern Wasteland dogs climb up so easily?" "That's right, they were clearly cheating. The Eastern Wasteland dogs were cheating, so the trial must be held again." The screaming only grew more and more intense. Mu Qingxian panicked as things went completely out of her control. The elders watched this chaotic scene with dark expressions. How were this year's disciples so shameful? "Hallmaster, send a few people to suppress them. Mu Qingxian is still too young and can't handle it," said an elder. "No need. Young people need trials to grow. This child Qingxian is a steady person, but she's not bold enough and needs to toughen up. Anyway, a group of children is unable to cause any ripples," said the hallmaster. Hearing the hallmaster's orders, the elders stayed quiet. The scene they were watching was completely chaotic. "Charge!" If those despicable Eastern Wasteland dogs can cheat their way into becoming the Xiantian Dao sect's disciples, then we can too. Suddenly, a person shouted and charged onto the staircase with a sinister smile. He was the one Long Chen had slapped before, Xie Wei. The formation had been deactivated, and the pressure of the Xian beasts had vanished as well, allowing them to charge up easily. It was true that from the start, Long Chen had passed through the trials easily. It could look like cheating. Furthermore, even the Dragonblood warriors had so easily passed this trial, with even rank 5 celestials thrown behind them. With the urging shouts of some people, some of them began to believe more and more that the Eastern Wastelands people had cheated. "Stop. Otherwise, I won't be courteous." Mu Qingxian was startled and infuriated. But in front of this tide-like charge of furious disciples, she found herself at a loss for what to do. "If you have any guts, just try and kill us all. You think you can open the back door to the Eastern Wasteland dogs while not allowing us to retort? We want justice," sneered Xie Wei as he led everyone charging forward. Mu Qingxian was so infuriated she turned deathly pale. She formed hand seals, but even after a long time, no attack was released. "Let me." Long Chen shook his head and pointed his finger. A bolt of lightning shot out at the one at the very front, Xie Wei. Xie Wei had never imagined that Long Chen would dare to attack him. He had no time to block with his weapon, and he hastily summoned a runic barrier around him. But it was instantly torn through by the bolt of lightning, and he was blown apart into bloody mist. With one attack, a rank 4 celestial at the very front had been killed, shocking everyone. "Bastard, you dare to kill people? I don't believe you dare to kill us all dash." A person shouting in the crowd didn't even manage to finish speaking before being killed by a lightning arrow. His soul was destroyed, and his corpse non-existent. Everyone stopped. Mu Qingxian jumped in fright, as even she didn't have the authority to kill people. "Kill all those who cursed us," said Long Chen coldly. "Boss, those were the words I was waiting for." A crossbow appeared in Guoran's hands, and golden arrows shot out like bolts of lightning. With each attack, a person in the crowd would explode. "Stop!" shouted Mu Qingxian. But Guoran ignored her. His crossbow continued to launch arrow after arrow, eliciting miserable cries from the crowd. Those overbearing, aggressive people immediately panicked. People amongst them continued to explode, splattering them with blood. "Boss, there were 57 people who cursed us. They've all been handled." Guoran put away his golden crossbow. Everyone was deathly silent, looking in horror at the emotionless Long Chen and the pleased Guoran. They were unable to say anything. Seeing that Guoran's killing had stunned the disciples who had been washed out, Long Chen icily said, "If anyone else wants to question the power of my Eastern Wastelands disciples, please go ahead." "Long Chen, how could you be so vicious to those from the same sect? You've gone too far," shouted Yan Mochen. "Idiot, who said they were from the same sect? They've already failed, so they aren't disciples of the Xiantian Dao sect, sneered Long Chen. But they're still disciples of the branch sects. How could you be so vicious and merciless to them? Han Yunshan also stood out. Exactly, whether or not they were disciples of the branch sects, they are still humans. How can you kill them without the slightest pity? Demanded Wei Changhai. The three of them were clearly standing together to target Long Chen. The disciples who had failed once more began to curse at him when they saw the three of them support their cause. Exactly, Eastern Wasteland dogs dash. A person who had barely opened their mouth was killed by Guoran. Guoran's crossbow was constantly being upgraded as his forging skills improved, and at this distance, there was no stopping it. Continue. Guoran pointed his crossbow at those people below. With such a terrifying crossbow pointing at them, their scalps turned numb. Although they had seen Guoran shoot several arrows, they were appalled to find that they were unable to even see the arrows, only able to faintly see a golden light before another person was killed. It was too fast for them to react, let alone dodge or block. These disciples instantly turned pale, not daring to speak. They looked from the crossbow to the pools of blood on the ground. Long Chen, how dare you order your subordinate to kill people? You dash, shouted Yanmachan. A nation has a nation's laws, a family has a family's rules, and a sect has a sect's rules. Right now, they've washed out but dare to charge onto the important land of the Xiantian Dao sect. They've broken the rules of the trial and gravely harmed the prestige of the sect. Even if I killed them all, there would be nothing wrong with it. You say they are the sect's disciples? For the sect's disciples to break the sect's rules, discriminate against a region's disciples, incite inner strife in the sect, and try to destroy the sect from the inside, they deserve death all the more. You should rejoice. If it weren't for a promise I made to one of my beauties to control my temper, well, if it was me from a year ago, you'd have long since gone into the path of reincarnation, said Long Chen. You're just twisting words. Yanmachan was unable to find a way to retort Long Chen's words. When it came to eloquence, even 10 of him weren't a match for Long Chen. Don't play such childish games with me. I don't have time for such senseless things. If you make me lose my patience, I'll kill all of you. Long Chen's gaze swept over the three of them, his killing intent suddenly surging. In that instant, the three of them felt like space had frozen around them. A fierce sensation of death made all their hair stand on end. Let alone the three of them, even Mu Qingxian was affected. She had never come into contact with such a terrifying killing intent. It was like just his killing intent could take a person's life. Long Chen was truly angry now. Although he had promised Meng Qi not to cause trouble and rein in his temper, that didn't mean he would just grin and bear everything. He wouldn't take the initiative to cause trouble. But if someone wanted to try to bully him, well, there was no way he was going to endure it. This was Long Chen's final warning to them. If the three of them still tried to find trouble for him and slow down his growth, then he wouldn't hesitate to pay any price to cut the three of them down. Everyone was deathly silent, because they were within the range of that terrifying killing intent. They didn't dare to move, feeling like a death god's scythe was pressed against their necks. Long Chen, as a disciple of the Xiantian Dao sect, you dare to indiscriminately kill the innocent. Just who gave you that authority? Suddenly, a cold shout rang out. Space twisted, and 2 new figures appeared in the sky. Those 2 figures wore black robes and had long chains in their hands. The jade plate on their waists had the law character written on them. Long Chen's eyes narrowed upon one of them. That was a familiar face. Lu Minghan, long time no see. I'm relieved to see your head has reattached so seamlessly. Only Mu Qingxian was aware of Long Chen's past interaction with Lu Minghan. In the Eastern Wasteland, he had once cut off Lu Minghan's head. Of course, that was just because Lu Minghan had been careless. It didn't truly represent Long Chen had the power to fight against kings. The other disciples present were unaware of this. Through his words, it seemed that he knew this elder and had also once cut off his head. They doubted his words at first, but Lu Minghan's furious expression verified his words. That scared them witless. What kind of monster was Long Chen? Long Chen, you're courting death. raged Lu Minghan, killing intent erupting out of him. I don't know whether or not I'm courting death, but I do know that you definitely are. If I could cut off your head once, I can cut it off again. And this time, I guarantee I won't give you any chance to reconnect it, said Long Chen. Originally, Long Chen had no intention of infuriating Lu Minghan, as that wasn't a smart move. But thinking of how this bastard had been greedy for his treasures and tried to use soul search on him, his hatred got the better of him. If he was stronger, he'd definitely go all out to kill him right now and then flee from the Xiantian Dao sect. But right now, he was too weak and could only endure. However, he wouldn't give up any chance to humiliate his opponents. His words caused everyone to suck in a cold breath of air. Their guess was right. He had truly once cut off the head of a king. That made their hair stand on end, especially those disciples who had failed the trial and tried to charge up by saying Long Chen had cheated. Their thought was that the law was unable to punish so many people and that no one would dare to do anything to them. And by saying that the Eastern Wastelands people had cheated, there was a high chance they would be able to muddle their way into the Xiantian Dao sect. Now they realized how wrong they were. Long Chen was someone who dared to cut off the head of a king, so of course he dared to kill them. Thinking of that, they felt that life was a blessing. Just now, they had truly brushed past a death god. Even Yan Mochen, Wei Changhai, and Han Yunshan's expressions changed, their faces pale as paper. They hadn't known Long Chen had such a terrifying history. That was especially true of Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai. They had exchanged blows with Long Chen. No, that was wrong. They hadn't exchanged blows. They had been beaten like children. As soon as they had attacked, Long Chen had knocked them unconscious with a slap to the face. Little brute, you want to offend your superiors? You've slaughtered innocent people, so you need to be brought to the law enforcement hall to receive your punishment. Lu Minghan's face was ashen with rage. The other person who had come with him was a stern-looking man. With a cold snort, the chain in his hand flew toward Long Chen. The chain was like a bolt of lightning. A terrifying pressure descended, one that froze space and made it so none of them could move. This was the irresistible pressure of a king. The disciples felt like an invisible hand was wrapped around them, and it was like they would be crushed to death with just a thought. Furthermore, what they were enduring was just some aftershocks. Long Chen was the one the pressure was focused upon. The chain seemed to fill heaven and earth. It possessed some bizarre law that made it impossible to dodge. Despite knowing he couldn't block it, Long Chen was just about to go all out. But suddenly, a large hand caught it. Matters of the disciple trials aren't for the law enforcement hall to interfere with. An elder appeared in front of Long Chen. Li Changfeng. Lu Minghan ground his teeth furiously. He was still infuriated about being suppressed by him last time. He had been unable to retaliate because all the evidence said that he was the one who had been in the wrong. Li Changfeng waved a hand, and the person who had sent out the chain immediately felt a powerful force knock him back dozens of steps. That person shouted, "The disciples' trials are under the purview of the elders' hall, but now someone has broken the rules and willfully slaughtered innocent people. It has exceeded the scope of the elders' hall's responsibility and must be handled by the law enforcement hall. Today, Long Chen, as well as the killer using the crossbow, must be brought away by us." As expected, no matter where he went, there were always muddied waters. Looking at Lu Minghan clenching his teeth as well, that sanctimonious fellow, Long Chen sneered inside. His delight in arriving in the Central Plains had diminished a great deal. To him, the Central Plains was a battlefield even crueler than the last. As for the Xiantian Dao sect, it would very likely just be a starting point. How did he break the rules and slaughter the innocent? Killing those people wasn't against the rules, but protecting the rules. Long Chen saw that Mu Qingxuan's hands were tied and she had lost control of the situation, so he had no choice but to quell the uprising. Otherwise, there would have been even greater casualties. There was nothing wrong with Long Chen's actions. Furthermore, those people weren't innocent. They failed the trial, and because of their resentment, they wanted to break the rules of the Xiantian Dao sect's trial. Each time we hold this trial, it is an opportunity to bring in fresh blood to the Xiantian Dao sect, and that makes it an important event that decides whether the sect will rise or decline. How could people trying to ruin that important event be called innocent? Said Li Changfeng. Although his tone was calm, his words seemed to possess blades, making his opposition unable to say a word in retort. Li Changfeng's mouth was indeed the sharpest. Even so, Long Chen can't just kill people of his own discretion. He doesn't have that authority. If everyone was like that, the Xiantiandao sect would become completely chaotic. He was simply acting in accordance with the situation, and in order to protect the sect, he had no choice but to be vicious. That requires bravery and courage. The hall master himself said that his conduct should be rewarded. If someone worked so hard for the sect but was punished instead of being rewarded, don't you think it would bitterly disappoint the sect's members? Said Li Changfeng. You're just spouting sophistry, inverting right and wrong, raged Lu Mingan's fellow expert. Somehow killing people had become something just and to be rewarded? He was clearly twisting his words. I think that's enough. This matter can be handled by the Elders' Hall on its own. There's no need for the Law Enforcement Hall to waste the effort. If you dislike this, you can go register a complaint at the Shentian Tower instead of shouting here and ruining the image of the sect. Leave now, and don't disturb the trial's process again, or we'll be the ones to register a complaint, said Li Changfeng coldly. Now his words contained no courtesy at all. He was expelling them like two dogs. In truth, Li Changfeng's arrival here was set up by the hall master. The law enforcement hall's hands had stretched too far in the past few years. It dissatisfied the hall master, and he was no longer planning on enduring it. Could Li Changfeng, just you wait. And you Long Chen, pray you don't land in my hands, otherwise, hee. Lu Minghan glared at Long Chen. Long Chen smiled and said, hurry up and fuck off. Threats won't show your dignity. Instead, it'll just expose your idiocy and treachery. For a law enforcement elder to be so petty as to threaten a disciple of the Dao sect for personal reasons, you really are trash. I wonder, what kind of place is the law enforcement hall for it to raise such a tyrannical and selfish blockhead like you? If people like you were to enforce the law, well, I don't believe you wouldn't harbor any selfish intentions. You'd frame and entrap people if it was to your benefit. How are you supposed to carry out the law fairly? Long Chen's words were even less courteous than Li Changfeng's. They were like slaps in the face. Long Chen, let's just wait and see then. Lu Minghan ground his teeth. He had no choice but to leave with the other law enforcement elder. Once the two of them left, Li Changfeng looked over everyone, and his gaze landed on Long Chen in the end. Take care of how far you go, warned Li Changfeng. Many thanks for the reminder, elder. Long Chen bowed slightly. He understood what he meant. He was telling him not to overstep. As long as he didn't go too far, the Elders' Hall would protect him. But once he went too far, he would have exposed an opening to the law enforcement hall, and then it would be troublesome. Long Chen now realized something. He was being used in a competition of strength between the law enforcement hall and the Elder Hall. He had become the Elders' Hall's weapon. But he didn't mind. When joining a tangled and complicated power, you had to choose a side. Wanting to offend no one was a fool's dream. The most important thing was to choose the right supporter. Having completely destroyed his bridges with Lu Minghan, the Elder Hall was the best choice. Furthermore, through the characters of Li Changfeng and Lu Minghan, he was almost sure that the Elder Hall was much friendlier than the Law Enforcement Hall. The trial is to continue. If anyone else dares to wildly make accusations, they'll be executed immediately, said Li Changfeng before vanishing from their sight. Those disciples that had failed didn't dare to make a sound. Their indignation was completely quelled. Mu Qingxian finally had a chance to say, the disciples that failed the trial have two options. You can return to your old sect, or you can stay in the Shentian Dao sect. We can stay. They were delighted and surprised. Yes, but if you do, you will not have the status or treatment of disciples. You'll be workers who are paid with cultivation resources. The bad news is that those resources will be very limited, and your room for growth will be minimal. It might be better for you to return to your original sect and be a tyrant there. The good news is that as long as you stay in the Central Plains, anything is possible. So ask yourselves if you're willing to bet your lives on a chance. That's all. Someone will come to get you in a bit. As for whether you want to stay or leave, think carefully. Your fates will be in your own hands. Mu Qingxian led away the people who had passed. Amongst the disciples who had failed, the ones who had been spoiled didn't want to stay as workers. They felt it to be too embarrassing, and it would be better to return to their old homes and live out a glorious life. It was the ones who had come from poorer origins that wished to stay behind. Even if they returned, they wouldn't be able to become tyrants at their level. Congratulations on passing. Follow me. Welcome to the Xiantian Dao sect, said Mu Qingxian. The huge stone gate slowly opened, the sound shaking their eardrums. Incredibly dense spiritual qi crashed over them. The spiritual qi was like a sea pouring over them. All their pores opened and greedily absorbed it. Long Chen was shocked to find that the spiritual qi in the Xiantian Dao sect wasn't just dense, it also seemed to contain something he had never felt before. He was unable to describe it. Seeing this huge gate open before them, the 100,000 disciples were incomparably excited. They followed Mu Qingxian inside. As for the disciples outside, they could only watch as those figures disappeared within the sect. Then the thick gate closed tightly. Long Chen and the others followed Mu Qingxian along a long path. The sides of the paths were lined with ancient trees thrumming with vitality. Dozens of miles in, a plaza appeared. The plaza was huge, several times bigger than the entire branch sect of the Eastern Wasteland. It was also much grander. At the center was a huge statue of a man. It was simple and majestic, seeming like a god overlooking the sky. They were surprised that the sea of people they had expected to see inside never appeared. Instead, there was only a single, long-haired man in the plaza. He stood there like a javelin planted in the ground, patiently waiting for them to get closer. His expression was icy, and faint runes were revolving in his eyes. Standing there, he gave off a dark feeling despite not having any of his aura leak. Greetings, senior apprentice brothers Su Mo. Mu Qingxian bowed slightly. It's been hard on you junior apprentice sister Qingxian. Leave the rest to me. The man called Su Mo returned the bow. His tone was refined and courteous, but also felt a bit icy. A faint killing intent pervaded the air around him. This is a true expert. Long Chen's pupils shrank. He sensed immense pressure from this person, a pressure that was even greater than what he felt from the elders. Although Long Chen couldn't sense his aura, he was able to sense the foundation forging realm's spiritual fluctuations. However, the reason why Long Chen felt that this man had to be incredibly powerful was because of the killing intent resting within the depths of his soul. He had to be an expert who had slaughtered countless people. His killing intent permeated every single one of his cells. Even when he spoke calmly, his killing intent leaked out. Mu Qingxian said, "Then I'll leave it up to you. I'll take my leave." After saying that, she waved her hand and left them all blankly standing there. Su Mo looked over them and shook his head. A fleeting emotion flashed in his eyes for too short of a time to see clearly, but Long Chen knew it was a kind of pity. However, when Su Mo's gaze swept over the Dragon Blood Legion, his eyes brightened slightly. His gaze suddenly stopped on Long Chen, and his eyes were like sharp blades that could see through his heart. Despite his electric gaze, Long Chen simply looked back at him without revealing the slightest emotion. Su Mo's icy mouth curled into a smile. He nodded slightly. Not bad, there are at least a few decent ones. Everyone was startled, not understanding what he was saying. But the pressure they felt from him made it so they didn't dare to ask. Let me introduce myself. I am Su Mo, a disciple from the previous generation. 10 years ago, I stood here just like you. Looking at you, I remember countless faces full of anticipation and hope. However, now that 10 years have passed and I stand here once more, the majority of those people have been buried beneath the ground, said Su Mo, ignoring their shocked expressions. He continued, "First, let me congratulate you. You've passed the initial trials and become a disciple of the Xiantian Dao sect. Some of you relied on your talent to pass, and some relied on luck. But either way, those are still your strengths and there's nothing wrong about either. However, this is just the first step. The trials you've passed are for the outer sect, so right now, you are outer sect disciples. My mission is to lead you to the next trial, the trial for the inner sect. The inner sect trial. All the disciples were excited, especially those disciples who were more talented. They almost couldn't wait. Looking at those excited expressions, the pity in Sumo's eyes increased. Inner sect disciples are treated 100 times better than outer sect disciples. But meat pies don't fall from the sky. And even if they did, you'd need the power to receive them. Without that power, if you force it, the result is that you'll be smashed apart by that meat pie. As expected, the trial for the inner sect was much more difficult. Although Wang Mang had refused to tell Long Chen anything on the journey here from the eastern wasteland because it was forbidden according to the rules, just from his tone, Long Chen had been able to guess a few things. Sumo continued, to put it in an ugly way, outer sect disciples are just some high-grade workers. They help the sect handle many complicated things, but they're much better than the ordinary workers. They not only get greater rewards, but they have a set amount of time reserved for cultivation and also have limited access to some cultivation regions. However, outer sect disciples are unable to completely focus on rapidly cultivating because they have to work to get their cultivation resources. Only inner sect disciples get free resources regardless of what they contribute to the sect. If those free resources aren't enough, they can accomplish missions for more points and exchange those for resources. Certain cultivation regions are open to them all year round. He's probably about to get to the bad part. Long Chen sighed inside. Now that the benefits had been described, it was time for the other side of things. As if cooperating with him, Sumo said, however, let me say it again. If you want to eat the meat pie, you need the power to do so. You also need courage as well as luck. That's because the inner sect trial is completely different from the outer sect trial. The outer sect trial was just a game for children with little danger, while the inner sect trial is true battle. The two words, true battle, struck like hammers in their hearts. When said in Sumo's dark and gloomy voice, it caused them all to feel a chill. When Sumo said these two words, they were full of bloodiness. The inner sect trial takes place on a bloody battlefield. Life is like a fragile flower there that can wither in an instant. The sect had me explain this to you so that you know that this trial is very cruel and very bloody. The chances of losing your life are extremely high. It's a battlefield only true experts can survive, so carefully consider whether you want to attempt it. Although outer sect disciples have worse treatment, if your display is outstanding, you will still have a chance to enter the inner sect. But if you fail the inner sect trial, you won't have any chance at all. His words resounded in their minds. The treatment that inner sect disciples received had filled them with anticipation, but now it was like a bucket of ice water had been poured over their heads. If you want to become an inner sect disciple, the first thing you'll need to do is to be prepared to give up your life. If you can't do that, then the chances of you surviving in the trial are less than 1 in 1,000. As your senior apprentice brother, I've seen many of my companions fall. I've seen their powerless struggle in the face of death. Once you enter that battlefield, don't vainly think that the people by your side will be able to save you. If people try to save you, they'll be placing themselves in danger and cutting their own chances of surviving. So, I am very bluntly advising all of you not to try it without thinking it over. Consider it carefully, warned Sumo. The air was tense, and it was like a stone was pressing against their hearts. They were deathly silent, and some people were almost unable to breathe. They were facing the excitement of being an inner sect disciple, as well as the threat of death. They struggled over this decision. Long Chen sighed. Sumo was being kind. These greenhouse flowers would definitely die in droves once they entered a true battlefield. That couldn't be blamed on them. The only ones that could be blamed were their sects that didn't understand that people couldn't be pampered. Now their disciples had a difficult decision before them. I've said everything I have to say. As for what you choose, it's up to you. If you want to participate in the inner sect trial, advance forward. If you don't want to, retreat, said Sumo. Following his words, the majority of people stepped forward. Only a few stepped back. Those people were the weakest as well as the smartest. They felt content just being outer sect disciples. The majority of those who retreated were rank 3 celestials. Many of them were those who had bitterly struggled to the end on the Shentian staircase and only passed because of luck. Just that rudimentary trial had made them powerless, so they had no hope at all for the next one. The absolute majority advanced, while a small portion retreated. There was also a small portion that were still hesitating. Their talent was not bad, and they were stronger than average. They were unwilling to give up, but then thinking of how difficult the Shentian staircase had been to climb. The next trial would be even crueler and more difficult. Suemo didn't rush them, just calmly waiting for their decision. What they were experiencing, he had also experienced. So he wasn't the slightest bit impatient. Finally, after an hour, everyone had made their decision. There were 20,000 people who chose to give up, and 80,000 that chose to continue to the inner sect trial. Seeing this many people still wanted to participate in the inner sect trial, a helpless expression appeared in Sumo's eyes. But he didn't say anything. People quickly came to lead the disciples who had given up away. They should be setting up their residences and positions. Once the outer sect disciples were led away, Suemo said, "Since you've chosen to participate in the inner sect trial, then as your senior apprentice brother, I can only wish you good luck. But before the trial, you have to meet a few people. Perhaps they can save your life on the battlefield." Countless runes on the floor tiles beneath their feet lit up. The space around them twisted, and they suddenly appeared in a dark and damp environment. Everyone found that they had been transported to a dark and damp environment. An aura of decay and death filled the air. They jumped in shock. Before they could clearly examine their surroundings, they were deeply shaken by the group of people in front of them. There was a sea of people staring coldly at them. A rough estimate put them at over 300,000. There were men and women amongst them, and they were all young. Although they were also sea expansion experts, they gave off heavy pressure just by standing there. They were like immovable mountains. True experts. Even Long Chen's heart shook. These people's auras weren't just condensed to the pinnacle, but their eyes were like blades. These people were completely different from the 3 outer regions' disciples. They were real experts who had seen blood before. Several people amongst them gave even Long Chen a sensation of heavy pressure. That made him understand something. "Let me introduce you. The ones in front of you are disciples from the same generation as you. However, they are disciples from the Central Plains," said Suemo. That shook the 4 regions' disciples. Although they had long since prepared themselves, having their guess confirmed still shocked them. That was because even though they were all at sea expansion, they could clearly sense immense pressure from these people, a pressure that made it hard for them to breathe. They definitely weren't on the same level. The Central Plains disciples looked at the bewildered disciples from the other 4 regions. Different emotions appeared in their eyes. Some were curious, some were disdainful, and some were icy. The 4 regions' disciples didn't know what to think. Looking at those complicated expressions, Suemo said, "I'm sure you feel a great deal of pressure, but you don't need to feel inferior. It's not your fault, it's the fault of your sections. In order to achieve the highest results, your sects focused on the quantity of disciples, slightly neglecting quality. Thus, your power is a bit empty. This is also due to the Shentian Dao sect's practices. The sect sends resources in accordance with how many disciples the branch sects can send to participate in the trial. So after making sure you were fat and plump, they sent you over. Because they were worried about losing out, they pampered you 100 ways, not letting you participate in life and death battles. If you are shelved weapons that have rotted in storage, then these Central Plains disciples are weapons that have gone through countless temperings and begun to release their light." Hearing Sumo's cold and frank words, Long Chen couldn't help but nod. Suemo was worthy of being a true expert. His vision was sharp, and he dared to say whatever he wanted. In front of these disciples, he dared to criticize the Shentian Dao sect's practices. That required a certain amount of courage. Furthermore, his words were absolutely correct. Other than the Eastern Wasteland, the other 4 regions were too peaceful. They naturally wouldn't need to risk their lives. There was no way around it for the Eastern Wasteland. Many good sprouts fell during the battles between righteous and corrupt paths. Even whole sects might be attacked, so there was no way to preserve the lives of their disciples. The Eastern Wasteland's disciples had no choice but to put their lives on the line, because if they didn't, they wouldn't have lives any longer. But the other three regions had it too good, and there was no reason for them to risk their lives. Now that Suemo said this, the three regions' disciples couldn't help but become a bit angry. They felt like their sects had limited their growth. But you shouldn't complain. Complaining is forever the helpless display of the weak. The reason the strong become strong is because they are always searching for their own reason to get stronger. The reason the weak become weak is because they are always searching for excuses for their own laziness. Hard work is never late, and in the Shen Dao sect, as long as you are talented and work your hardest, you will eventually be able to release your light. However, your previous laziness and peace have overdrafted your luck. Now that you've decided to participate in the inner sect trial, the heavens will be taking everything that you owe. I tried to advise you not to participate, but you all still chose to try it. I don't know whether I should praise you for your courage or your foolishness. As your senior apprentice brother, I'll be ruthless and give you another blow. In your current state, it would be a miracle if even a third of you managed to survive the inner sect trial. Suemo shook his head. Hearing this, all their expressions changed. Although they had felt the inner sect trial would be difficult, this terrifying mortality rate caused their hearts to sink. Of every three of them, only one would survive, and those that survived had to be both strong and lucky. It is too late for regret. I'll direct you to a smart path right now. If you want to live, join one of the factions of the Central Plains disciples. When the Central Plains disciples arrive at the Shen Dao sect, they don't need to participate in the outer sect trial. They can directly participate in the inner sect trial. They were originally elites, and each one of them has experienced over 10 life and death battles. You can't compare to their battle experience. In terms of talent, you might be around the same, but when it comes to combat strength, they are 10 times stronger than you. If you want to keep your lives, abandon your dignity and try to join them. The four regions' disciples didn't know what to say. Looking at those icy Central Plains disciples, it felt like they were wagging their tails pitifully. They were geniuses, not beggars. Most importantly, even if someone did give up all their face, what if they refused you? Would you not feel ashamed to even keep on living? Suemo said to the Central Plains disciples, in the Shen Dao sect, you have to establish your own factions, so this is the best way to expand. Gold will eventually release its light, but once it does, it will quickly be taken away by others. This is now a test of your ability to see who is gold. The four regions' disciples have unsteady foundations, but their talent is still high. They've passed the Shen staircase, so their will is also firm enough. They aren't actually inferior to you, they're just lacking an opportunity to rise. So whether you're recruiting or joining, this is a good opportunity for you. Grab hold of it yourselves. Senior apprentice brothers Suemo, can we form our own faction? We have the power to protect others, said Yenmachin. At the same time, Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai also stood with him. Quite a few disciples were following them. Long Chen shook his head. Yenmachin's intent was clear. As a rank 5 celestial, he definitely wouldn't lower his head to anyone. He wanted to work together with Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai to form their own faction. Teach, with your little power, just protecting yourself would be difficult enough. How do you have the power to protect others? A tall and skinny man from the Central Plains disciples suddenly walked out. As soon as he did, the other four regions' disciples were shocked. There were no fluctuations coming from him, but the space around him was constantly twisting. Heaven and earth seemed to ripple like he was standing in water. Some faint runes flickered around him, but that wasn't intentional or conscious. The realm of being merged with heaven and earth? Han Yunshan, Yenmachin, and Wei Changhai were all shocked. Others might not know, but they knew that this was a level only possible when one's heavenly Dao runes were condensed to a pinnacle. A portion of their runes would merge with heaven and earth. That was a realm only innate rank 5 celestials had the qualifications to reach. And even though the three of them were also innate rank 5 celestials, Reaching the realm of merging their heavenly Tao runes with heaven and earth wasn't just a matter of talent. It also required comprehension. Correct. If a celestial hasn't even reached the realm of merging with heaven and earth, then they're no more than a dabbler celestial. Only once you reach this realm can you control heavenly Tao energy with just a thought. You're still a far cry from this point, said that man. But even if I haven't reached that realm, it's just a matter of time. Even if I don't possess that ability, I'm still a rank 5 celestial. I have the power to protect myself, as well as the power to protect others, cried Yen Machin. Is that so? Then let's test that. I'll be your opponent. See if you can protect yourself. After saying that, no one even saw him bend his knees or raise his feet before he moved like a phantom. There was no sign at all, and by the time people realized he had moved, he was standing right in front of Yen Machin. Yen Machin was startled and he let out a punch. His earth runes covered his fist, and still not feeling reassured, he summoned his great earthen armor. Shockingly, when Yen Machin's fist struck that thin man's body, his body exploded in an instant. What speed! Long Chen's eyes narrowed. Perhaps others hadn't seen, but the instant that man had been about to be struck by Yen Machin's fist, his feet had taken a strange step, and he had vanished. To others, it looked like his body had been destroyed by Yen Machin's fist, but he was just too fast. What was struck was just an afterimage. An icy sword pressed against Yen Machin's neck, its sharp edge easily going through Yen Machin's runic armor. Blood slowly seeped down the sword. For a moment, everyone was deathly silent. An icy voice rang out behind Yen Machin. Now tell me, how are you supposed to protect yourself, let alone others? His voice resounded in all their ears, and blood dripped down his sword drop by drop, causing everyone to smell the scent of death. This tall, skinny man was too terrifying. Even someone as strong as Yen Machin was unable to receive a single blow from him. If he had wanted to kill him, his head would already be rolling on the ground. It had happened so suddenly that it felt like it was over before it started. The four regions' disciples all felt a chill. The difference in power was too great. The Central Plains disciples just indifferently watched, as if they had long since expected such a thing. There was faint derision in many of their eyes. Suemo didn't say a word. Everything was within his expectations. How powerful! What kind of footwork was that? Tangwana was also shocked. She had exchanged blows with Yen Machin, and so she knew how strong he was. Last time, she had been able to fight evenly with him, even slightly winning. But she had been taking advantage of his minimal battle experience and using the openings between his moves. Even so, she had been unable to defeat him. But this person was able to defeat Yen Machin in one move. Although they were both rank 5 celestials, the difference was immense. In truth, this is normal. This is the power a rank 5 celestial should possess. Yen Machin and the others are truly marvels. You can't learn a rank 5 celestial's power by fighting them, said Long Chen. He felt his blood quicken, and he sensed excitement in his bones. That was a desire to fight against real experts. It was just an accident. I wasn't properly prepared and didn't agree to fight you yet before you started. Yen Machin was sweating, but he still put on a strong act. Ha! Hearing Yen Machin's quibbling, the Central Plains disciples laughed. He actually wanted to find such reasons for his loss. Did he think this was a game for children? Long Chen was also speechless. Even he was being laughed at indirectly. The Central Plains disciples weren't just laughing at Yen Machin, but also at all the four regions' disciples. Laughably childish. On the battlefield, will your enemies tell you that they're going to kill you before doing so? Sneered the tall, skinny man. Furthermore, I warned you, but you were unable to block. I didn't even use my heavenly Tao energy or activate my spirit blood. You're too weak. Your cultivation base might be high, but you don't know how to use it. A sheep with no claws is still prey no matter how big it grows. Since you aren't convinced, I'll give you another chance. The three of you can join hands. If you can receive 3 exchanges from me, you can go ahead and form your own faction. He put away his sword and looked at Yen Machin, Han Yunshan, and Wei Changhai. His tone was flat without a hint of derision, but it was completely unacceptable to them. Fine, then we'll attack. Yen-Machin refused to give up like this. Although he had to admit he wasn't his match, he didn't believe that they wouldn't even be able to last 3 exchanges once they joined hands. Earthen suction. Yen-Machin shouted, and the ground began to shake. People felt a powerful force pull them down into the earth. It was like their bodies suddenly became thousands of tons heavier and they were unable to move. This was an incredibly rare gravitational move. The Central Plane's disciples' derision faded, replaced with shock. This earth energy was extremely powerful. Even the aftershocks already possessed such power, not to mention the force that the tall man was enduring. It had to be at least 100 times stronger. Your earth energy isn't bad, not bad at all. The tall man's eyes brightened. Although it sounded like praise, it wasn't the praise of someone acknowledging his equal, and so it was no different than a slap in the face. Yen-Machin was enraged. Earth Spirit Fist. Yen-Machin roared and countless runes lit up on the ground. The instant Yen-Machin attacked, the earth erupted and a huge arm shot out at the tall man. This was Yen-Machin's strongest attack. He hadn't used it against Tangwana. But at that time, it wasn't that he hadn't wanted to use it, but that he hadn't had the chance. This move had a long cast time, and Tangwana never gave him the chance to use it. But now it was different. This tall man was allowing Yen-Machin to absorb as much energy as he wanted so he could unleash his strongest move. Seeing this move, Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai, who had been brewing their own attacks, stopped. They were afraid they would kill their opponent, and that would be troublesome. Boom. Suddenly, heaven and earth trembled and everyone staggered, almost falling. Yen-Machin's fist had smashed into a runic barrier, shaking it slightly. All of the spectators could clearly see Yen-Machin's runic energy being broken down by the barrier. The tall man stood within the barrier, indifferently looking at Yen-Machin. "Bastard, break!" roared Yen-Machin. The earth around him trembled even more intensely than before. Endless earth energy surged toward him. What an idiot! It's like he's trying to make a bag explode by pouring in water, but the bag has holes in it. No matter how much water he pours in, it's useless. "Li Qi, Song Mingyuan, don't learn from him," said Long Chen. "Don't worry, boss, we have brains," said the two of them, expressing the greatest difference between them and Yen-Machin. Chilling Ice Slash. Water Dragon Attack. Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai saw that their expectations were off, and they also unleashed their strongest attacks. The two of their attacks were incredibly powerful. A huge water dragon and ice blade mercilessly crashed down on the barrier. Be repelled. The tall man extended a single hand. A terrifying force suddenly erupted, and runes filled the sky. Boom! 3 figures flew back, wildly vomiting blood. Yen-Machin, Wei Changhai, and Han Yunshan were blown back with a single attack. As for the tall man, he was still in his original posture with his arm outstretched. His body hadn't moved at all. How could he be so terrifying? He can send the 3 of them flying without the slightest effort? Asked Guoran. Everyone was shocked. Was the difference really this great? 3 peak experts joined hands but were unable to even shake their opponent? That blow to their confidence was a bit too strong. What he used was technique. His runes are very special, and he absorbed Yen-Machin's runic energy without him even noticing. He's very powerful to be able to absorb his opponent's energy and transform it into his own power secretly. By the time they sense it, it's too late. It's like they just beat themselves. It saves energy, it's effective, and it's simple. In battle, each little bit of energy you can save gives you a greater chance of survival. So this person is definitely an expert, said Long Chen. This person was powerful and had plenty of battle experience. Compared to Yen-Machin and the other greenhouse flowers, he was probably over 10 times stronger. With just great power but no way to use it, you'll just throw away your lives to your enemies. Now that we've exchanged blows, I can say that you might be able to protect yourself in the upcoming trial, but protecting others would be a joke. You just cause them to die. If you join my faction, I can make you my assistants and teach you what I've learned through my years of life and death battles. You'll be able to become true experts in the shortest time possible, said the tall man. What a routine. First, he gave them a slap, then he brought out the candy to entice them. Long Chen couldn't help being moved. That slap in the face even had benefits for those three, erasing the arrogance in them. Now through his condescending kindness, it truly was difficult for them to refuse. Ugure-shan, your appetite's a bit too big. Aren't you worried you'll get fat if you eat all three? Suddenly, a cold shout rang out, and a large man like an iron pagoda walked out. As soon as he walked out, everyone jumped in shock, even Long Chen. This person was huge, only a bit shorter than Wild. But his body was incredibly wide, making him not seem so tall. His exposed arms were as thick as a person's waist. The blood vessels on his arms were like crawling serpents. His muscles bulged intensely, and it was basically impossible to see his neck since it was covered up by muscles. His blood chi was incredibly powerful. Overall, his body was like a volcano about to explode. There were faint runes circulating over his bronze skin. With each step he took, the ground shuddered, and his footsteps were like the ringing of a bell. He practically didn't look human. He was more like a human-shaped magical beast, appearing frighteningly fierce. What a powerful physical body. He's probably a body cultivator, said Long Chen. Body cultivators were extremely powerful, but cultivating the body was one of the most painful and bitter methods to cultivate. Furthermore, it required an extremely powerful constitution that few people possessed. They focused all their cultivation base on strengthening their physical bodies. Their bodies would be even harder than a treasure item, and all their moves would be backed by immense power. This was the most domineering cultivation method. That earth brat, you should follow me. Your physical body is not bad, you should be a power type. If you follow him, you won't learn shit, said that large man. For another terrifying figure to appear stunned the three of them. Furthermore, just at this time, a refined voice rang out. Stinky men, go and fight all you want. All the women can come to my side. A beautiful woman walked out gracefully with enchanting charm. But her gem-like eyes contained a repelling iciness, and her voice was haughty. Following her was a group of women, and all of them were beautiful as well. Another person difficult to deal with. Long Chen narrowed his eyes. Why would you have to deal with her? Tang Wan'er glared at him. Long Chen rolled his eyes. She really didn't know how to have a proper conversation. Her heavenly Tao energy fluctuates around her, and not the slightest bit of her aura is leaking. That means her control has reached an extremely terrifying realm. Furthermore, that natural light in her eyes, it's clearly a sign of dense spirit blood. She is extremely powerful, said Long Chen. Whether it was the tall Hugui-shan or the iron pagoda-like man, they didn't say anything further. They were clearly familiar with her, and it seemed that they were afraid of her. Any woman with talent and looks can become one of my subordinates, she said. The women amongst the 4 regions' disciples were delighted to hear that and rushed over to her side. Compared to the men, the women were truly a bit weaker. Now that someone specifically wanted them, they rushed over. Brother Long, what do you think? Should I go rely on this big sister? Zhao Ziyan walked over and quietly whispered to him. Zhao Ziyan was clearly probing his attitude toward her again. Long Chen could only thicken his face and say, this woman is a phoenix amongst mortals. If you follow her, you'll definitely learn many things that will be of great value to your future. Choosing her would be the wisest decision for you. He said it with a smile, but he felt that his smile was very fake. Oh, many thanks for your pointers, Brother Long. That's what I was thinking too. Take care. Zhao Ziyan smiled slightly, but a trace of disappointment could be seen in her eyes. Watching Zhao Ziyan's departing figure, Long Chen felt a few complicated emotions. Tang Wan'er lightly pushed him, saying, Fool, this sister is a good person, and she's talented with a high cultivation base. She clearly wants to join the Dragon Blood Legion, so why would you refuse her? It's naturally because I love you too much and worry about you being jealous. Dislikable. I refuse to believe you. However, she still blushed. She was very satisfied with this reply. Long Chen, although I'm a bit petty, I'm not someone who can't see the big picture, nor am I a violent shrew who gets jealous and complains, said Tang Wan'er warmly, holding Long Chen's hand. Really? How come I can't tell that? Said Long Chen. Bastard, do you believe me when I say I'll bite you to death? Tang Wan'er's warmth instantly vanished without a trace. She glared at him, looking like she might pounce and take a bite out of him. Yes, this I definitely believe. Long Chen nodded obediently. You bastard, you refuse to listen when people talk to you normally. Instead, I have to beat you fiercely for you to behave. Fine, Lady Wan, if you have anything to say at all, this little one will carefully listen, said Long Chen, putting on a humble expression. Be serious. This is important. Tang Wan'er hit him lightly before saying, Sister Meng Qi said that I can't be petty with you over big matters, as that will influence your plans and affect the entire Dragonblood Legion. As the soul of the Dragonblood Legion, the burden on your shoulders is incredibly heavy, and each of your decisions could decide our lives and deaths. So Sister Meng Qi said I can scuffle and quarrel with you, but at critical times, I have to express my support, even if you're going around picking up girls. Long Chen was dumbfounded to hear this. But looking at her aggrieved expression, he felt a burst of emotion. She was the most jealous of girls, but for Long Chen she would force herself not to be jealous. Sister Wan, are you encouraging Boss to pursue Zhao Ziyan? How magnanimous! Boss, what are you waiting for? The beauty is right there beckoning to you. Although whether or not you pursue her has nothing to do with us, it's easy on the eyes, said Guoran expectantly. I really will slap you if you spout more nonsense, raged Long Chen. From morning to night, this brat didn't think about any proper things. He didn't even understand what heat control was. Long Chen, Zhao Ziyan is talented with unlimited potential. If she joins the Dragonblood Legion, it will strengthen the entire Legion. The danger to each one of us will lessen a bit. I don't want you to make the wrong decision because you're worried about me, said Tang Wan'er, her voice slightly choked with sobs. Long Chen held her hand, his heart filled with emotions. A person's character didn't change. For Tang Wan'er to be able to say such words meant she really wasn't an obstinate girl. Women naturally didn't like sharing the person they loved with others. And if the roles were reversed and Tang Wan'er wanted another man, Long Chen definitely wouldn't be able to accept that. His refusal of Zhao Ziyan made her grateful, but she was also worried. She was worried about whether the growth of the Dragonblood Legion would be held back because of her. If someone from the Dragonblood Legion fell, she would feel guilty, and she was worried Long Chen would hate her for that irreplaceable loss. She wasn't afraid of death, but she was afraid Long Chen would hate her. That was the thing she was most terrified of. So although she clearly didn't like Long Chen accepting other women, she still expressed this attitude. Foolish girl, when did I ever need to seduce women to strengthen my group? The hot-blooded brothers I have are enough to dominate the Central Plains. Long Chen gently wiped away Tang Wan'er's tears. Exactly, Sister Wan'er, you're worried over nothing. With us brothers together, what can't we do? However, getting back to that point, if there really was a beautiful woman who wanted to join, it wouldn't be a bad thing, Aya. Guoran was kicked away by Long Chen. The only thing you remember is beatings, laughed Tang Wan. I'm talking seriously. That Zhao Ziyan's talent is so good, and she's not bad as a person. Why not pull her in? Demanded Guoran, unconvinced. Long Chen shook his head. People can't be too selfish. She isn't someone that walks the same path as us. Why pull her in and ruin her life? We walk a path of thorns and bones, and our hands are dyed in blood. Our path isn't suitable for just anyone. Whether it's Meng Qi, Wan'er, Zhiqiu, or Chu Yao, they all don't like fighting. It's the opposite, they loathe it. But you all raise the butcher's blade because of me. I understand all your pain, and I owe you all too much. Why owe others as well? Long Chen, Tang Wan'er's eyes reddened. When you talk like a normal person, you make me happy. Long Chen rolled his eyes. She was getting less and less good at talking. The good atmosphere vanished with just a sentence. As they were talking, the disciples from the Central Plains split up, forming factions. There was a man with a mustache and light beard that startled Long Chen. A strange fluctuation came from him that caused Huolong to grow restless. It was like the earth flame had been provoked. It began to automatically release its pressure. Long Chen looked at that man, and he looked back at him. He had also sensed Long Chen's existence. That man was a bit startled, but he quickly became calm. With a cold snort, a faint smile appeared on his face. Long Chen narrowed his eyes. Perhaps he had just gained a terrifying opponent. This man also had an earth flame within him, and one that was extremely powerful at that. He should be a flame cultivator. Long Chen was startled. This person's body contained a terrifying earth flame, one that was even stronger than Huolong. Furthermore, he sensed that his flame energy possessed no trace of wood spiritual energy. In other words, he was no alchemist, but a pure flame cultivator. Alchemists didn't just need flame energy, but also a trace of wood spiritual energy. Only then could they refine pills. Without that trace of wood spiritual energy, there was no way for them to control a pill flame precisely enough to form pills. That was why a flame cultivator's flame wasn't called a pill flame. Their flames specialized in offense and destruction. They were berserk and powerful, and normally, flame cultivators were the ones hardest to get along with, as their tempers were too explosive. Long Chen also noticed that the earth flame in that person's body had sensed Huolong and had formed a clear hostility toward it. This kind of hostility was only natural between earth flames, because they relied on devouring each other to increase their own power. Long Chen didn't know if the hostility he sensed was from the earth flame or the man himself. Other than that terrifying flame cultivator, the other person to draw his attention was a gloomy-faced man. There was no sign of his cultivation base or his heavenly Dao runes. He seemed like an ordinary person, but Long Chen sensed an extremely dangerous feeling from him. He's a soul cultivator. Long Chen finally decided that he was likely a soul cultivator. But according to reason, a soul cultivator shouldn't be able to give him such an intense feeling of danger. Just as Long Chen was sensing these terrifying figures, he suddenly noticed a shift behind him. Turning around, he saw that the beautiful, icy woman had walked over to him. That was the beautiful expert that had said she would accept all talented and beautiful women to her side. Now she was in front of Long Chen. More precisely, she was in front of Tang Waner and didn't even look at Long Chen. "Junior sister, your strength is not bad. Join my faction. There's no need to rely on a pack of smelly men," said she. Long Chen was just a bit surprised at first, but her words made him frown slightly. The insults towards men that came out of her mouth were irritating. Her tone was icy, but her beauty gave off a feeling of innate haughtiness and grandeur. It made it so the Dragon Blood warriors were unable to express their anger. It was like she was an arrogant peacock. Although she was arrogant, she had the qualifications to be, making people feel like her arrogance was simply natural. Long Chen frowned but didn't say anything. It seemed that this phrase did have a bit of reason behind it. Compared to women, men really did smell more. But if men had to wear perfume all over their body, it would be too annoying. Being a bit stinkier was better. Me. Tang Waner was stunned. She hadn't expected this powerful woman to take the initiative to invite her. "You don't need to have any misgivings. If anyone is threatening you, just tell me and I'll trash him." That woman glanced at Long Chen coldly. Her meaning was clear. Seeing her dense hostility made Long Chen even more irritated. He had seen countless people now, and with his experience, he could basically see through a person's character with a glance. This was a powerful but conceited woman. Whether it was in terms of power or beauty, she truly had the right to be conceited. But he refused to be threatened by her. "My temper's not good. Don't think that I won't beat you just because you're a woman. Let me tell you, when I get angry, I even beat myself," he said, glaring at her without yielding a step. After saying this, he clearly felt the Central Plains disciples become silent. They stared at him in shock. Quite a few people had worshipful looks, while even more had expressions delighting in his misfortune. There were also some who had been prepared to see a good play like this from the start and were full of expectations. "This brat's definitely dead. The 100-flower fairy hates it when people discriminate against her for being a woman, muttered some people. This woman's temper was something all the Central Plains disciples were aware of. Brat, you dare look down on me, Hua Shiyu? Do you believe me when I say I'll twist your head off? As expected, she frowned and a cold aura began to rise. Suddenly, millions of flower petals appeared, revolving around her. Boundless pressure erupted. Each one of those flower petals had 5 colored runes moving within them. They surged into the sky, forming a huge phoenix. The phoenix was lifelike and even let out a beautiful phoenix cry that resounded throughout heaven and earth, causing countless people's expressions to change. That voice contained a terrifying spiritual suppression. It was like it truly came from an ancient god, making people have an urge to kneel in worship. Even the distant Su Mo's expression twitched. Closely staring at Hua Shiyu and the phoenix formed of flower petals, 2 words involuntarily escaped his mouth. Ancient art. Long Chen was startled by this power. Although he had known she was powerful, he hadn't expected it to have reached this level. That phoenix behind her was like a powerful 9th-rank magical beast. In front of this inviolable Hua Shiyu, Long Chen indifferently spat out, "I don't believe that." That made everyone from the Central Plains take in a cold gasp of air. Was Long Chen really looking to die? Hua Shiyu's expression sank. Her phoenix's runes lit up and its powerful aura locked onto Long Chen. In that instant, Long Chen jumped in shock. He suddenly felt like an ancient beast had set its gaze on him. What would follow would probably be a thunderous attack, and he was just about to release his own power to defend. That's enough. Do I need to explain that this is against the rules? Just at this moment, Su Mo's cold voice rang out. Hua Shiyu glared at Long Chen, her aura not weakening at all because of Su Mo's words. Long Chen glared back at her. His spiritual yuan was already circulating within him, and he was ready to attack at any time. He knew these Central Plains geniuses were on a completely different level than Yen Mochen and the others. They were true experts, and once they fought, it would definitely be a heaven-shaking battle. But he was confident he wouldn't lose. This was the confidence built up from never experiencing a loss to anyone in the same realm. It hadn't happened in the past, and he was confident it wouldn't happen in the future. Long Chen glared at Hua Shiyu, and Hua Shiyu glared at him. Neither side took even half a step back. Hua Shiyu's aura continued to rise. Long Chen was starting to be unable to endure it. If he didn't release his power, he would be forced into a disadvantageous position, and if Hua Shiyu attacked at that time, he would be instantly defeated. Just as he was preparing to summon his divine ring, Hua Shiyu retracted her aura, and her huge phoenix let out a cry as it decomposed into flower petals that then faded in the air. When those flower petals disappeared, Yen Mochen, Wei Changhai, and Han Yunshan were all startled. Now they understood the true terror of merging with heaven and earth. A portion of Hua Shiyu's heavenly Tao runes stayed within her body, while another portion was merging with the space around her, and they couldn't be sensed by others. In battle, she could release her full power in the shortest time possible. If her opponent wasn't ready, they would be instantly killed. This was also why Yen Mochen was suppressed from the start against his opponent. This was the power of merging with heaven and earth. Furthermore, when they weren't in battle, that portion of heavenly Tao runes in the space around them would give them a close connection to heaven and earth, making it easier for them to comprehend the heavenly Taos. I'll let you off today. Don't provoke me again, or you won't be so lucky. Hua Shiyu suddenly turned to look at Tangwan. Junior sister, men are never reliable, and being powerful yourself is the correct path. Thank you for your kindness, but I'd prefer to stay here. Other than that, Long Chen really is a good person. I hope you won't make things hard on him, said Tangwan. For some unknown reason, Tangwaner felt some worship for this female expert. She saw another kind of beauty from her. So a powerful and domineering woman was also so moving. Alright, if you have any troubles, just tell me. The Heaven Female Alliance's door will always be open to you. Hua Shiyu nodded and left. But before leaving, she didn't forget to glare at Long Chen threateningly. Heaven Female Alliance? Said Long Chen as he watched Hua Shiyu leave. This big sister is very powerful. To tell the truth, I really am a bit moved by her proposal, said Tangwan. Long Chen's face immediately turned dark. Girl, do you not have the slightest trust in me? No, not that. I was thinking of helping you form an alliance. Tang Wan'er stuck out her tongue at him. Guo Ran raised his hand. I agree with that plan. Gu Yang seconded. Song Mingyuan, I second it +1. Li Qi, same. Shut up. Long Chen raged. All of you want to go against me? You want to play this voting game with me? Stop messing around. The upcoming trial is not going to be ordinary. Start getting tense and stop spouting nonsense. These brats had all been led astray by Guo Ran. Instead of learning other things, they had become experts in talking nonsense. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen. Just at this moment, a man hesitantly walked over. At this time, the 4 regions' disciples had all run over to the Central Plain side, wanting to find a good faction to rely on. Only this person came over to Long Chen's side. Qian Duo, come over. Stay with us. Long Chen smiled. This was the person who had been peddling those miraculous and divine seeds. Many thanks. Qian Duo was so delighted that his voice quivered slightly. Previously, he had already run over to the Central Plain side, but none of them had wanted him. And so he could only return and ask Long Chen. He hadn't expected Long Chen to agree without saying another word. The Dragon Blood Legion had never admitted new people before. Guo Ran, you bring him along during the trial. Long Chen left Qian Duo with Guo Ran. Qian Duo's power truly wasn't that great. No problem. Brother, stick with me and I'll carry your posing arts soaring over the horizon. Guo Ran patted Qian Duo's shoulder. What? Qian Duo didn't know how to reply to that. Long Chen laughed. Don't look down on him just because he talks drivel. His power is definitely reliable, and as long as you stay with him, you'll be fine during the trial. Hearing that, Qian Duo was much more relieved. He didn't get the feeling that Guo Ran was extremely powerful. The Dragon Blood Legion was an isolated faction now. But they weren't accepting others, so they didn't affect the other factions' recruiting. Naturally, no conflicts arose from that. Long Chen saw that the powerful Central Plains experts had accepted many elites into their camps. But there were over 30,000 disciples that had been excluded. These disciples decided to form their own factions since no one else had claimed them. They had the numbers, but not the power. However, there was no way around that. If they didn't band together, their chances of surviving the trial would be even lower. Seeing that the factions had been formed, the taciturn Su Mo finally opened his mouth. The inner sect trial can start now. I wish you good luck in surviving to the end. Boom. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted, and the world changed around them. Their vision darkened, and they appeared in a desolate valley without the slightest life. Brutal auras crashed upon them. Before they could even figure out what was happening, furious roars shook the heavens. Countless figures charged out from every direction. Before they could even look around, tyrannical and brutal roars rang out, shaking their eardrums. Countless figures charged toward them. Those figures were all 3 meters tall with arms and legs like apes. However, they had long fangs and sinister eyes. Sharp bone spurs grew out of their elbows and shoulders. Their numbers were endless as they charged toward them with brutal auras. This is the inner sect trial. You're currently in a sea of bone spur devil apes. To pass the trial, you must reach the end of the valley. This isn't a trial, but a true battle. You cannot retreat, so you either succeed or you die. Good luck. Su Mo's voice rang out in their ears, but they couldn't see him. Those countless bone spur devil apes had already rushed toward them, and they began to launch attacks right as Su Mo's voice faded. Watch out! Ah! As soon as the bone spur devil apes arrived, their huge claws stretched out. Their half-a-foot-long claws were sharper than treasure items, and in the first instant, quite a few disciples were killed. What startled everyone was that these bone spur devil apes were only at the Sea Expansion realm, but the Sea Expansion Celestials were unable to block them. In the first collision, over 1,000 disciples died. They panicked. The bone spur devil apes were too brutal, and many disciples had never experienced such a terrifying battlefield. Quite a few of them were scared witless. A group of cowards. Even without any power, you ran over here to give your lives away. Foolish to the max. Suddenly, a cold snort rang out. That large and muscular man charged out of the crowd and let out a single punch. Boom. Terrifying astral winds erupted. A powerful fist image smashed apart countless bone spur devil apes, forming a hurricane of blood in the air. Their blood wasn't red, but pitch black. A disgusting stench attacked people's noses as even the ape's blood was full of a brutal aura. That large man had introduced himself when recruiting disciples. His name was Fan Song. He was a rank 5 celestial, and this attack was nothing more than a simple punch to him. His power shocked everyone. The faction Fan Song had formed was called the Hegemon Hall. Yen Machin had joined the Hegemon Hall because he was impressed by Fan Song's power. Following Fan Song, the tall and skinny Hugishan who had defeated Yen Machin's group of 3 also attacked. With a single slash of his sword, a huge wave of sword chi blew apart the bone spur devil apes. His destructive power was just as shocking. Hugishan was also a rank 5 celestial. His faction was called the Divine Beast Mansion. As for why he chose such a name, no one knew. His previous display of defeating 3 rank 5 celestials had caused quite a few elites to flock to his side. Han Yunshan and Wei Changhai had both joined his faction. Not only that, but Hu Guishan also had quite a few ancient race experts in his faction. They possessed a portion of a Xian beast's bloodline and were extremely powerful. Following Hu Guishan and Fan Song, heaven and earth shook as a terrifying heat erupted. A furious roar shook the heavens. A huge flame beast had appeared. It was lizard-like and completely formed of flame runes. It was over 5 miles long, and as soon as it appeared, space wildly twisted around it. A man stood on the flame beast's head, icily looking around, his eyes full of arrogance. Earth Flame Beast? He's actually merged with his earth flame instead of devouring it. Damn, he really does have the qualifications to look down on others. Long Chen was shocked by the power of his earth flame. The huge flame beast opened its mouth, and a wave of flames roared out. Those bone spur devil apes turned into black clumps that crumbled. Not only that, even the earth was starting to melt, looking like it was becoming lava. The flame beast's 4 legs were like pillars. As it advanced, the land shook. It crushed any bone spur devil apes in its path. This huge flame beast was incredibly impressive. It blew so many bone spur devil apes apart that the pressure on everyone else lessened by a great deal. The man standing atop the flame beast's head was the flame cultivator that Long Chen had sensed hostility from. His name was Kei Xinyan. The faction he had established was called Flame Gate. He had also recruited quite a few experts, as he was truly powerful. Just this one earth flame beast was enough to suppress countless experts. Some insignificant bone spur devil apes are nothing more than fodder. Suddenly, an extremely thin man walked out. He didn't seem to have much flesh on his body, all skin and bones, appearing extremely odd. He extended a withered hand, and space trembled slightly. Countless insects suddenly appeared in the air. Those insects were the size of a fist and completely black. They had a pair of wings and huge pincers at the front that shone coldly. The flying insects directly flew at the bone spur devil apes. With just one bite, the apes let out miserable cries. Then their bodies stiffened and they didn't move again. Once they were immobilized, countless insects pounced on them and began to tear into their flesh. They were quickly turned into white skeletons. Seeing such powerful beasts be eaten in the blink of an eye, everyone felt a chill. These insects were too terrifying. The most shocking thing was that they were practically endless. More and more of them filled the air, and they eventually formed a sea that devoured any bone spur devil apes in their path. What are those things? Cried Guoran. He's an extremely rare insect cultivator. If you're stretching it, you can call him a beast tamer. But contrary to beast tamers, they walk an extreme path which makes them even more terrifying. If an insect cultivator wants to tame insects, They must use their own essence blood to feed them. Only then can they control the insects to fight for them, said Long Chen gravely. No wonder he looks like a corpse. All his essence blood was consumed by insects, said Guoran. Meng Qi has said that insect cultivators are exceptionally rare. They not only need powerful soul energy, but they also have to be ready for their insects to attack them at any time. It's an extremely crazy method of cultivation, no different from playing with fire. Most insect cultivators are unable to grow, because without enough money, the majority of them are eventually eaten by their own house pets, said Long Chen. Everyone's scalps turn numb. This was a completely abnormal method of cultivation. To use one's own body to raise insects, that was absolutely crazy. This insect cultivator's name was Wang Zhen. He was extremely icy and didn't talk much with others. Although he had also established a faction called the 10,000 Insect Guild, he hadn't spoken with anyone. He had left that to his subordinates to handle. Just as everyone was shocked by the insect cultivator, a brilliant light filled the air. Countless flower petals appeared as Hua Xiu also took action. The 5 colored petals were like a beautiful wave in the air. They were incredibly dazzling, but any bone-spurred devil apes that approached her were torn apart by the flower petals. It was beautiful and bloody. Even Long Chen had to sigh emotionally. When it came to beautiful techniques, Hua Xiu was definitely the highest level he had seen. Following Hua Xiu's attack, a burst of cheering filled the air. It came from the women Hua Xiu had recruited. The Heaven Female Alliance only accepted women, but otherwise, its requirements were low. Wang Zhen's 10,000 Insect Guild, Kei Xinyan's Flame Gate, Hu Gishan's Divine Beast Mansion, Fan Song's Hegemon Hall, and Hua Xiu's Heaven Female Alliance. They were the 5 great factions in the trial. Of these 5 factions, the Heaven Female Alliance had the greatest numbers. Practically all the women had joined her side. Hua Xiu was incredibly powerful, and most of the women had preferred to join a faction led by a woman. The feeling of being looked down upon by men was irritating. The Heaven Female Alliance had 130,000 members. Following it was Hu Gishan's Divine Beast Mansion at 90,000, and then Fan Song's Hegemon Hall. His charisma was a bit lower than Hu Gishan's, but just his domineering display and appearance had drawn over many people. He had 70,000 people. Fourth in numbers was Kei Xinyan's Flame Gate at 50,000 members. As for Wang Zhen's 10,000 Insect Guild, it was unknown whether it was because he wasn't famous enough or if he was too icy, but he only had 20,000 people. Other than them, there were 30,000 disciples that hadn't been chosen for any faction. Those people's strengths and talents were too low. There was also the Dragon Blood Legion, which numbers were pitifully few compared to the other 5 great factions. Their numbers had only increased by 1 thanks to Qian Duo. Originally, Long Chen had been thinking of bringing along the other disciples from the Eastern Wasteland, but the majority of them had failed the outer sect trial. The few that had passed through luck directly gave up on the inner sect trial. Long Chen, aren't you thinking of forming your own faction? Why don't you show off your strength as the commander? Do you only have this little ability? Just as Long Chen was about to call for everyone to change formations and charge, a beautiful and provoking voice rang out. It was Hua Xiu. Even while displaying such a huge scale attack, she didn't forget to look at Long Chen. Long Chen was speechless. He asked himself how he had offended this woman. Why was she fixated on him? But being looked down upon and targeted like this, if Long Chen continued to endure, he wouldn't be Long Chen. Since Sister Hua Xiu wants to see, then I'll show you my power. Long Chen snorted. One of the tattoos on his arms lit up, and a dragon's cry shook heaven and earth. A 10-mile-long flame dragon appeared in the sky. Flame scales flickered on its body, and its high heat roasted the air. Even the flame cultivator Kei Xinyan's eyes narrowed. He was unable to recognize the origin of Long Chen's earth flame, and he had never seen a dragon-shaped earth flame beast. But after a moment of shock, a greedy light shone in his eyes. Long Chen stood atop the flame dragon's head, his robes billowing around him. His eyes were like stars, and now he seemed like a completely different person. He looked like an undefeatable war god. Brothers, charge! Don't let these city people look down on us, shouted Long Chen. Hua Long roared and charged at the Bone Spur Devil Apes. K equals common surname, XN equals hot, Yen equals flame. Sounds like, meaning stupid, dim-witted, uncomprehending of obvious things. Boom. Hua Long charged forward. Wherever it passed, the Bone Spur Devil Apes were burnt to crisps. With Hua Long leading the way, the Dragon Blood warriors roared, their voices shaking the sky. Terrifying killing intent erupted, and in that instant, it felt like space had frozen. Behind Long Chen, Gu Yang, Guoran, Song Mingyuan, and Li Qi were attacking the Bone Spur Devil Apes that covered the land as far as one could see. Even the valley in front was packed full of them. Standing on Hua Long's head, Long Chen clasped his hands behind his back. There was no need for him to do anything as the Bone Spur Devil Apes were unable to stop the power of an earth flame. Seeing that Long Chen also had an earth flame startled everyone. Hua Xiu snorted and didn't say anything. Just based on the fact that he possessed an earth flame, Long Chen was qualified to form a faction like them. As for Long Chen's people, although they numbered less than 400-300, instead of using the most energy-saving wedge formation, they spread out in an arc as they pushed forward. They really overestimate themselves, said Kei Xinyan disdainfully. The 5 great powers were charging forward at the same time, pushing along with wedge formations. But Long Chen's side was clearly spreading out, so Kei Xinyan found it disdainful. Long Chen didn't even look at Kei Xinyan. He naturally had his own reasons. Many thanks, senior apprentice brother Long Chen. This formation was naturally for the 30,000 disciples that hadn't been chosen. If they still couldn't understand like this, then they really would be idiots. The Dragon Blood Legion was cutting open a path for them. The other factions tightened their battle formations as much as possible, while Long Chen spread his formation to the greatest extent. Although these people were unrelated to him, Long Chen didn't want to just watch them die here. As long as there was still no threat to the Dragon Blood Legion, he could open a path to survival for them. But this path was not so simple to go through. Although the Dragon Blood warriors were spread out and killing the majority of the Bone Spur Devil Apes coming from the front, there were still quite a few attacking from the sides. Those disciples were still being killed. Idiot, do you think you're their savior? They're just trash, or why would we toss them aside? What you're doing is absolutely futile. Sneered Han Yunshan from behind Hu Geishan. If you keep talking, I'll slap you again. Long Chen glanced at him. You. Long Chen, pay attention to your tone. Han Yunshan is now one of my people. Hu Geishan's sword continuously danced in the air, sweeping out sword chi that easily cut down his opponents. You mean if I want to beat a dog, I first have to check with its owner? Asked Long Chen. Youngster, this character of yours will make it easy for you to suffer losses, said Hu Geishan coldly, his expression sinking. Long Chen was ignoring his threat. Thank you for your praise. It's been a long time since someone has called me a youngster. But there's one thing you're wrong about, I don't suffer losses. Everyone has their own way of living, and you can refuse to acknowledge other people's conduct and even spout your nonsense. But remember, it will be painful when you get slapped by others, so don't complain at that time, said Long Chen lightly. Long Chen, Tang Wana looked at him. Go ahead. Long Chen nodded. Only then did Tang Wana appear at the forefront of the battle, wind blades whirling around her. They rapidly spread, covering all the people behind the Dragon Blood warriors. Within the wind blades, those people were temporarily safe. Fool. Seeing Tang Wana not hesitate to unleash such a powerful magical art to protect these disciples, Hu Geishan sneered. The other experts also sneered disdainfully, thinking Long Chen and the others were fools for wasting their precious energy on these hopeless people. That wasted energy might be the factor that caused them to lose their own lives. Whether it was Hu Geishan, Fan Song, or Kei Xinyan, they all had a disdainful look on their faces. Wang Zhen's expression was icy like usual as he ignored them and focused on controlling his insects. On the contrary, Hua Xiu's expression softened slightly. She wondered whether Long Chen was just trying to show off or whether he really wanted to help these people. Senior apprentice brother Long Chen, Seeing the Dragonblood warriors spreading out their formation as wide as possible and Tang Wan'er spend her precious spiritual yuan to protect them, quite a few disciples were touched and even wept tears. Long Chen sent out Hualong to attack while he turned back to face those disciples. You don't need to feel emotional. The reason I'm helping is because I was moved by you. Thus, despite knowing there was no hope on the Shantian staircase, you still bitterly endured and refused to give up all the way to the end. That made me very emotional. To not give up under those circumstances doesn't just require willpower or courage. I see the determination in your eyes, the kind of determination to burn all the bridges behind you if have to. I trust that few of you have any status or background, so you came to the Central Plains with the will to change your fates. Looking at you, I think of myself when I was young. Each day I was powerless, mired in despair. At that time, I wished so much that someone would help me. I swore that if someone gave me that chance, I would definitely cherish it 1,000 times over and put in 10,000 times the work of others. Looking at you, I see that same resolve, and so I came to help you. But you have to be clear about one thing. On the cultivation path, a person can only help you once. If you can grasp that opportunity, then grasp it. If you can't, it will be very unlikely for a second chance to come. Right now, the trial has only just started and will become even more difficult toward the end. So listen closely. Long Chen's voice reverberated through the air. All the disciples behind the Dragonblood Legion listened with rapt attention. However, the others had long since begun looking down on this conduct of Long Chen's. Someone sneered, "Who wants to listen to your farts? Even if you have to fart, make it quieter dash." That person's head suddenly exploded as a golden arrow struck him. Guoran had killed him in an instant. "Long Chen, you're asking for it," roared Kei Xinyan. That person was one of the experts from his faction. "Idiot, you really are fucking stupid. If you keep talking, then let's stop the trial and I'll play around with you properly." Now Long Chen was also angry, and he glared at Kei Xinyan. "Since you want to die, I'll accompany you," raged Kei Xinyan. He hated it the most when people called him stupid like that. It was an insult to his name. "Kei Xinyan, if you want to fight, don't disturb my faction, or don't blame me for the consequences," warned Hua Shiyu. That was because their 6 factions were charging forward side by side. Hua Shiyu was between the Dragonblood Legion and Kei Xinyan, so if he were to attack, he would have to go through her faction. "Long Chen, just wait," snorted Kei Xinyan. But he continued forward. Long Chen narrowed his eyes. Kei Xinyan's fury was fake, and he was just using it to conceal his greed. This little scheme of his wasn't able to escape Long Chen's eyes. Kei Xinyan targeted him not because he wanted to seek revenge for his people, but because he coveted Long Chen's earth flame. Once he devoured it, his power would rapidly rise. Long Chen sneered. He dared to place his sights on him? Good, very good. Long Chen continued speaking to the disciples. "You've also seen that the so-called experts are only at that level. As long as you are given an opportunity, you can also reach that height. In fact, you can reach even greater heights than them. I can only protect you for a moment, so listen closely. If you want to become an expert, it depends on your talent, the resources you're given, your origins, your master, etc. Of course, if you have a rich daddy, everything will go smoothly. However, you don't have such things, or you wouldn't be in your current straits. So if you want to become an expert, there's only one thing left to you: to put your lives on the line. Right now, that's the only trump card left for you. If you keep hesitating, that trump card will be lost as well. Think about those people beside you that were torn apart by the Bone Spur Devil Apes. They wanted to put their lives on the line, but they didn't have the power to even do so. If you continue to hesitate, you'll be thrown into the dust. Look at those idiots sneering at you. They're looking down on all of you. Are you willing to die just like this? If death is on your left and right, why not put everything on the line for once? Only if you are ready to lose everything can you one day trample those people who are looking down on you. Only by going all out, only by being willing to lose your lives, can you bring forth a glorious future for yourselves. Only then you can return to your hometowns decked in glory. Whether it's for yourself, your family, your friends, or whether it's for those idiots who are looking down on you, what reason do you have to not put everything on the line right now? What are you still hesitating for? Your opportunity is right in front of you. Each slain bone spur devil ape brings you one step further. Raise your weapons, release your power. Shed your hot blood to show that you're alive, that your fate is in your hands. Kill. 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 Under Long Chen's emotional and impassioned speech, the cowardice and misgivings in those disciples' hearts were instantly stripped away. He was absolutely right. There was no way back any longer. If they still didn't put everything on the line, they would only die under other people's sneers. If they went all out, at least they would have more dignity. And they might even win a slight chance at survival. Why not go all out? Why not kill? Their roars rang out in waves, each higher than the last. Only now did Tang Wan'er slowly withdraw her sea of wind blades. The originally fearful and timid disciples raised their weapons with scarlet eyes, charging at the bone spur devil apes. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.